Duncan. Welcome in. We haven't started preaching yet. Once we're in, then I'll preach away. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for stopping by. Happy Friday. You're not here? Okay. Never mind. It's just, it's all over the yet. I'll be here eventually though. Thank you for being here, everyone. Hey everyone, welcome in. My name is Wax Philosophical and I like to wax the philosophical. And today is Friday. Yes, it's Friday. Thank goodness to all you suckers who have to work Monday to Friday. It is finally your weekend. For suckers like me who work every single day, it doesn't matter. But it's still nice to celebrate with you guys. It is Friday, August 14th, 2026, and we actually have some pretty interesting news happening today. If you have been following along the Luigi Mangioni, Brian Thompson case, the United Healthcare CEO killing, there's been a major development, and it's I saw headlines that were leading up to this that kind of gave the indication that this would happen. Lady sitting on a throne like she's our overlord or something. Hell yeah, baby. However, if I was anybody's overlord, I would make sure to provide them with the best life I possibly could because, you know, that seems like an honorable goal. Why would you not want to do that, right? My beautiful throne that I blend in with. That someday the goal is to get it reholstered so that I'm not the same color as the chair eventually. Okay, with that being said, we have some updates to the Luigi Mangioni, Brian Thompson, United CEO, healthcare CEO case. It was probably one of the most prolific cases, I think it was of 2024 when the murder happened. And I'm amazed that the trial has been going on, like not the trial itself, but the preparation leading up to the trial and everything like that has taken so long to get to this point. But we have an update on that. We're going to be doing a little bit of looking into and trying to understand prison abolition a little bit better because that is one of my blind spots, and I figured why not cover it on stream? Everybody can get a little bit educated as well. I feel so bad for Brian. Are you kidding? Seriously? I mean, he was murdered. So that is relatively fair to have empathy for him. However, there are a lot of people who are not feeling all that empathetic to him because, you know, he profited off of so many people suffering off of what is like a human necessity. Let's face it, that's healthcare, right? Off of insurance company, no less. So it's not even like he was profiting off of the work of doctors or anything like that. He was just profiting off of people's needs for healthcare. And then we have, is the U.S. spying on left-wing groups? I'm not so sure. And then the deportation economy and how it is having a negative impact on workers in the U.S. So I figured that would be interesting. And then maybe Elden Ring this stream, but I will definitely be doing Elden Ring with Ricky Fontaine later today. Ricky Fontaine MF, go check out his stream because I will be streaming with him. I might go live later around 9 p.m. PST, depending, to stream with them and the boys and stuff like that. Duncan says, right, everyone. We feel so bad, right? Yeah. Even I was just like, oh, shit. And then I found out who it was. I was like, oh, yep, I can understand why that happened, right? Like, I mean, I feel like, you know, I feel bad for the family, but at the same time, I can understand why the world and the nation had the response that it did because of the nature of health insurance companies and how predatory and despicable they are. We might end up watching, what was that documentary called, Sicko? We might end up watching the Sicko documentary Monday or something like that to recap like what exactly, how horrendous and disgusting insurance companies are, but I'm pretty sure most people are familiar. So we'll see what happens over the weekend. But yeah, other than that, we got, I'm just going to pitch movie night. We got movie night Sunday. That's right. We're going to start a little bit early this Sunday, but usually movie night starts at 7 p.m. The movie starts at 7:30. This Sunday, we're going to be starting at about 5:36 p.m.-ish, and we're going to be talking a little bit about flock cameras in advance of the movie, because we're going to be watching Enemy of the State featuring Will Smith, and I figured it was related, and there's been a lot of hubbub about flock cameras and the massive increase of flock cameras and other types of cameras like flock cameras popping up all over the United States, so I figured it would be interesting to cover. We love health insurance CEOs, don't we, guys? Yes, don't we? Don't we? They're our favorite. There are precious little princesses and princes, and they just do so many things for us, like deny us life-saving health care and charging us egregious amounts of money unnecessarily for medication, for life-saving and life-changing medication. And even if it's not life-saving and life-changing, you bet your ass they're going to charge you out the nose for that too, because they're going to try and drain your bank account as much as they possibly can every single step of the way. How people in the US don't know how big of a scam their healthcare system is beyond me. But then again, I'm a little selfish because I live in Canada where we have publicly funded healthcare. And so, even if you end up paying a little bit more in taxes, it ultimately ends up being cheaper overall than what you were paying, year over year for insurance. And even if it ends up costing you a little bit more in taxes, even if it costs you a little bit more in taxes than what you were paying through insurance, you are still guaranteed healthcare, versus with your, insurance company, you're not guaranteed shit. Duncan sent me a link. I clicked on it and we'll watch it in just a second. And Duncan says, don't like violence, but some pushback, like in the French Revolution, would be nice. Yeah, okay, let's go and check out this link that you sent us. Is this it? Is this about the French Revolution? Let's see what's going on here. La guillotine permanente vaporwave. Oh my goodness, what is this? Okay, let's see.
Le député guillotin dans la médecine, très expert.
This is not what I was expecting it to be. Is there like a drop or something I should be waiting for?
C'est la guillotine, ok, c'est la guillotine. Pour punir la trahison, la haute rapine, ces amateurs de blason, ces gens qu'on devine, voilà pour qui l'on
Give us a little bit better, Jesus.
C'est la guillotine, ok, c'est la
No, that didn't help. Made it worse. That guy was responsible for the terror in French Revolution, killed a few tens of thousands of people because he said they weren't anti-revolutionary. Yeah, I think it depends on how it happened, but yeah. Well, excuse me. Let's get into here. It's so hot here. The air quality is under air quality advisory because the fires are back, so I'm a little tired. But Luigi Mangioni pleads guilty to federal stalking charges in United Healthcare's CEO case. I'm pretty sure he pled guilty to also the murder, but don't quote me on that. We're going to watch this video by CNN as well as read the article. I don't endorse him, but he was fine, not gonna lie. Yeah, I think that's kind of like Chairman Mao. Like, I don't necessarily endorse Chairman Mao himself and his practices and like some of the more egregious things that he's up to, but the general concepts behind his beliefs are something that I can see the appeal of. But the whole like, mass murder thing, not quite so much. So we don't need to necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can keep the concepts and leave the shitty parts behind, learn from their mistakes, and move forward. Nah, Mao was cringe, not gonna lie. He was a freak. If the things that I learned about Mao are true, Jesus Christ, what a terrible, like, ugh, yucky. I don't like that. But some of the concepts that he was espousing, I can understand why people goofy mofo. Yeah, definitely. Oh, just a second. Give me back this. Okay, perfect. There we go. Yeah, I agree. I think that he is kind of a weirdo, in my opinion. I don't think that we should model our lives after him, but some of his talking, I can understand why people like. Okay, let's read the article. Let me bring it up and over here. Robespierre was really a vibe, though. What did you like about him? Okay, in court today, Mangioni pleads guilty. Luigi Mangioni has pleaded guilty to federal stalking charges in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. I shot Mr. Thompson in Manhattan and he died, he told the court. I knew what I was doing was illegal. State trial, Mangioni's state trial is due to begin next month, but following today's plea, his lawyers filed for a motion to dismiss state murder and weapon charges on double jeopardy grounds. Mangioni previously pleaded not guilty in both his federal and state cases. In remarks after the hearing, one of Mangioni's lawyers said prosecutors are trying to punish him twice. I wonder if this is actually going to work. Duncan says he went mad and decided he was God in the end. Oh, that sounds like Trump. But at least did some iconic stuff and guillotined tens of thousands of it. So you have a problem with Mao, but you don't have but this is a bond for you, Duncan? Oh my gosh, I don't understand the through line, but all right. State trial. Mangioni's state trial is due to begin next month, punishing twice. Inside the courtroom today, Mangioni said he posed as an investor to find out information about the 2024 United Healthcare Conference in New York. Thompson's widow and other family members became visibly window. I can't read. Yes, because Robespierre had clean teeth. Oh my god. That's the limit for you? Thank God I brushed my teeth today. But, like, do I get a bump up because I also don't have any plans to kill tens of thousands of people? Jesus. Inside the courtroom today, Mangioni said he posed as an investor to find information about the 2024 United Healthcare Conference in New York. Thompson's widow and other family members became visibly emotional in court as Mangioni spoke. What happens next? Mangioni's sentence in federal case is set for December 18th. That's quite a ways away. Catch up on how today's hearing unfolded and what comes next for Luigi Mangioni. Just a second. Luigi Mangioni has pleaded guilty to federal stalking charges in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He will remain in federal custody pending sentencing, which is scheduled for December 18th. Here's what comes next in the high-profile case. Judge Margaret Garnett explained to Mangioni that he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. Mangioni's lawyer confirmed to the judge that there is no plea agreement with the government, which means they have not agreed on a sentencing range. A former U.S. prosecutor told CNN it's very likely the judge will sentence him to life in prison or something close to it. Yeah, which doesn't surprise me at all, given both the high-profile nature of the case as well as like just the veracity of the crime. The plea raises questions. And by the way, if you're wondering why he's pleading guilty, My guess is that he's pleading guilty to avoid the not the states, but the higher up case that carries the potential for death penalty. So he's likely trying to save his life. The plea, raised with questions about a state case in New York, which is set to go to trial in a few weeks, will proceed. The defense has filed a motion to dismiss, but all but one of the charges in the state case, arguing the dual prosecution arising out of the same event violates Mangioni's right. Double jeopardy, I think it's called. The state case issue is likely set off a complicated legal battle, another former U.S. prosecutor told CNN. A spokesperson for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office said it is prepared to litigate the defense motions. Here's a full breakdown of where the state charges stand. If you're not just joining us, here's how the courtroom proceeding unfolded. Let's see this first. Do we get to see it? Okay, so the New York State case, here's the state charges against Mangioni. 1 count of murder in the second degree, 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree, 3 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. I wonder why, so this is something that sometimes prosecutors will do. They'll try to stack charges. So I wonder why it's 2 counts of possession of a weapon in the second degree and then an additional 3 counts of possession in the third degree. I wonder how they got to that. 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree, 1 count of criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree. The punishment for 1 count of second-degree murder could be life imprisonment, which is the top charge in this case. The judge can also set a minimum sentence of 15 to 25 years in prison. There are 11 counts in the original indictment, but the judge dismissed the top 2 counts, which were 2 terror-related murder charges and another weapons charge. I'm bored. Might just getting married, not gonna lie, for the heck of it? What do you mean? What? That came out of left field, Duncan. Why are you gonna get married out of nowhere just because you're bored? You might just get married, if I'm not gonna lie. Why? Why? Just because? Not because you're in love with the person? Not anything like that? The punishment for, this is the case in which Mangioni's team has filed a motion to dismiss murder and weapon charges, arguing his guilty plea in the federal trial today triggers New York State's law's double jeopardy protection. Here's CNN's easy explainer on what double jeopardy is. It basically just means that you can't be tried for the same case twice. The motion did not ask for the charges of possession for a forged instrument stemming from Mangioni's alleged possession of a fake ID to be dismissed. Just want some drama, No, and then cheat on her? What the hell, Duncan? Oh my god, that's you just want drama? Dude, there are TV shows for that. Christ, what the hell? There are some pretty good TV shows out there. Days of Our Lives is a classic. You don't need to hurt somebody. Not gonna lie, IRL drama. Oh my god, play a video game. Play Liza P or something. I don't know. There's gotta be a video game out there that covers this kind of drama too. Jesus Christ. Status of the other cases, Pennsylvania case. Meanwhile, if you're wondering about the status on this, it's tied to his arrest at the McDonald's in Alatoona, but the case has been on the back burner while the federal and New York State case plays out. Her feelings, her problems, oh my god. I won't hurt her, it can't be both. It can't be I won't hurt her and then her feelings, her problems. You kind of got to pick one or the other. Cheating isn't illegal and therefore is moral. Okay, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. There are lots of things that used to be legal and that still are legal that arguably are pretty freaking immoral. So I don't know. Case in point, health insurance companies are legal, but they're incredibly immoral in my opinion. Just a quick reminder on federal case, Mangioni has pleaded guilty in this one. He faces up to life in prison for two stalking charges because prosecutors allege the conduct resulted in Brian Thompson's death. Life imprisonment is not a mandatory sentence. The judge could set a term of years. District Judge Margaret Garnett told the 28-year-old that prosecutors determined the federal sentencing guidelines suggest about 24 to 30 years in prison. The judge, however, is not bound by those guidelines and can consider other factors in her determination. CNN noted that the judge explained all this to Mangioni today. We're up to speed now. Okay. I don't want to date or marry in India. It's a nightmare fuel. Why? Why is that? Why do you feel like that's the case? Okay. I think we read this part, so we're going to go back. Oops. Did I go too far? Maybe? Uh-oh. Oh, never mind. I'm an idiot. Very likely, complicated breakdown. Yeah, okay, here we go. Caste and religion and stuff. Okay, fair enough. Are you trying to find somebody who is agnostic? But it's not the common in my generation. That's good. At least it started. Like the whole caste system is wild to me. Like the bleaching, like skin bleaching, and all this other stuff that used to be incredibly commonplace, and the pressure to be light skinned versus dark skinned, and that whole nonsense is just a form of racism. Kind of, it's like, okay, you've taken it to a whole new level. That's impressive. Especially when you're competing with the United States and Canada and other places. But if the family finds out, they can do all kinds of legal stuff to suck the lifeblood out of you. So, what do you mean? What do you mean? Anyways, if you're joining us, here's how the courtroom proceeding unfolded. Mangioni spoke quickly and used few words to admit what he had done. I shot Mr. Thompson in Manhattan, and he died. He added that he knew what he was doing was illegal. Mangioni also outlined how he posed as an investor in an email to United Healthcare leadership in an effort to learn more about the conference Thompson was attending. I wonder if after all of this, Mangioni is going to express to us why he specifically targeted Brian Thompson, because that's an unanswered question as far as I'm aware. Like, I understand that, he was a CEO and things like that, but he wasn't the only one. Duncan says there's a weird ass law that allows the family to intervene sometimes. Interesting. But if you're not trying to marry there, then you wouldn't have to worry about that, right? When would they need to intervene? Okay. United Healthcare leadership in an effort to learn more about the conference Thompson was attending. Mangioni has accepted full responsibility for the death of Brian Thompson. With the guilty plea, Mangioni's lawyer, Karen Friedman Agnifilio, excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, said he believed that the system had failed him and destroyed his life, she said, reiterating statements Mangioni made about severe back pain and frustration navigating the healthcare system. Yeah, I think that people tend to underestimate and undervalue the amount of debilitation that constant chronic body pain can cause to a person, and the constant expectation to just work through it regardless. And then you have you're having to fight with a healthcare healthcare, that's bullshit, that's not what insurance companies are. I'm so sorry I misspoke. But health insurance companies in order to just be able to potentially get some help, and you never for sure know whether or not you're going to get it. Anyways, I'll click on that link in a short bit. They'll put some case accusing the other person of religious conversion or whatever. Oh, interesting. Here, I'll click on it for later. I just want to get through this story first. Oopsies. There we go. Oopsie doopsies. Okay. Prosecutors also reviewed some of the evidence they have against Mangioni, including security footage. Prosecutor Dominic Gentile explained the elements of charges they would have needed to prove a trial. Thompson's mother, widow, and several other family members were sitting in the front row and were visibly emotional during the moments of the hearing. After the proceedings, Thompson's family called the plea an important step towards justice in a statement. Outside the courthouse, New York Police Department Commissioner Jessica Tisch told reporters that today is an important moment for accountability. Prosecutors said Mangioni's case underscores the violence is not a legitimate way to advance any political or social belief. Okay, well, that's bullshit. There have been endless amounts of revolutions that have, resulted in varying levels and degrees of violence that have indeed furthered and advanced political leanings. Unless you're trying to say that January 6th didn't play a role in, Donald Trump's reelection at all. Thomason accountability, give me a break. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I understand what they're saying, but they're incredibly biased in this situation. They kind of have to say it, I think. A crowd of journalists and members of the public gathered outside court throughout the day, though there were noticeably fewer protesters and onlookers than the throngs that gathered for the past hearings. CNN's Aditi Shangal, Paris Shkanel, Alicia Embrahimici, I'm so sorry, Nikki Brown, and Lauren Del Valle contributed reporting to this post. This post has been updated with additional information. So it talks about multiple times about how Mangioni emailed United Healthcare to get information about the case. And I think one of the things that, he expressed was that he got an answer within days versus the way that he was treated in regards to trying to interact with the insurance company in regards to getting approval for treatment and care. It took egregiously long, if he got any response at all, kinds of thing. But whenever it came to investments, right away he got an email within 2 days. So I'm assuming that was probably a part of the thing that drove him. But we're gonna quickly watch this video that was sent by Duncan. Luigi Mangioni edit. Okay, let's see what's this.
Which corner of the internet you're in, Luigi Mangioni is receiving global support. People are sending him money while others are making merchandise. This as other healthcare CEOs are beefing up their security. Which corner of the internet you're in?
That was cute. So I know in Canada, when it comes to sentencing, they take into account, they would take into account things like, his pain and suffering and his upbringing and all this other stuff. I don't think the same thing is true in the United States. Let me just double check that I have volume on, and then we'll watch this video that recaps everything as well. Okay, let's see here. Oopsies. Oh, okay, let's go.
Out to our Shimon Prokupez right outside the courthouse in New York City, where Luigi Mangioni confirms he is prepared to plead guilty. Tell us more, Shimon.
Okay, so I'm going to just bring it to you right now from inside the courtroom. Mangioni has begun speaking, and here we go. After years of enduring pain from a broken back and witnessing similar experiences of others, he said he learned United Healthcare would be holding its annual investor conference in December 2024. He said the public location wasn't posted, but he researched to learn the location and who would be there. This is him now in court speaking to the judge in this allocution. This is the part.
I wonder if, during this entire process as he pleads guilty, if he will explain, how long he was planning this for, why he specifically targeted this CEO over others, what was his deciding factors on this person over another. I mean, that's just like, semantics and stuff like that. But Duncan says, that's so woke in regards to the way that the Canadian legal system handles criminals here. If it were up to me, I'd just chuck everyone who insulted me into the Pacific Ocean. I mean, that's one option, but it's not necessarily a just one.
Hard for the judge to decide whether or not she is going to accept this plea. And he's now describing in his own words how he was stalking United CEO Healthcare Brian Thompson, saying that he learned of where he was going to be and that after years of enduring pain from a broken back and witnessing similar experiences of others, he researched where Brian Thompson would be at an investor conference in Manhattan in 2024. Brian Thompson's family seated Pamela in the front row. They are crying, is what our reporter Kara Scannell is telling us. What a moment for that family to come face to face. It breaks my heart because they have been so silent and they have not said anything throughout this whole ordeal. And to see their loved one to be murdered in this way, and now the man responsible for it standing up in court for them will be excuses, and none of this is going to make sense.
I'm going to be honest with you, it doesn't break my heart in any way. The people that I have, reserved my sympathy and empathy for, although I understand, it's still a tragedy for, Brian Thompson's family, are all of Brian Thompson's and, United Healthcare's, they're victims. All of their victims, because I can't imagine the number of people who have died due to being rejected life-saving healthcare options that probably would have only cost the company pennies. They'll literally the entire job of health insurance companies, and it's not to ensure that you get the healthcare that you need, it's to ensure that they squeeze out every single red cent that they possibly can from you, including but not limited to if it costs you your life, right? They do not value you in any sort of way, although the people who run, these companies arguably are hopefully not amoral. It's said that companies are, and so that's the way that they're operating, and that's the way that it's claimed that there's people who are in charge are just well, it's the company, it's what they're supposed to do legally. What we're supposed to be required to do is to get as much money for our shareholders as possible. Which, how that law ever passed in the United States is absolutely insane to me, because look at what it's resulted in. And especially when it comes to health insurance companies, the fact that the US is so allergic and it's been so propagandized against the potential of reforming these types of systems, it still blows my mind, especially with high profile cases like this. I just don't quite understand it.
Hear him explain why he did what he did. And we have heard this from Luigi Mangioni before during the investigation of this, where he was having issues with his back. But for this family to sit there and listen to this, and he's now, here we go, Pam, again, he says to the judge, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died.
Wow.
He concluded by saying, I knew what I was doing was illegal. Again, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died. I knew what I was doing was illegal. That family is sitting in that courtroom listening to this.
Come on, CNN.
Again,
Can you ham it up
he admits
anymore?
now, in his own words, to stalking Brian Thompson. He says that in November of 2024, that he traveled, Luigi Mangioni telling the judge, I traveled from outside of New York State to Manhattan. So he came from outside of New York. I emailed United Healthcare leadership. Wow. So this don't think I've heard this. I don't remember ever hearing this. I then emailed United Healthcare leadership, Luigi Mangioni saying that he emailed United Healthcare leadership posing as an investor at a firm managing over $15 billion in assets and requested information about the conference.
Wow.
Unlike my previous interactions with insurers,
$15 billion that's just one insurance company in the United States. Like, imagine how much care people could get for billion dollars, excuse me, not million, $billion in the United States if there was not only healthcare reform, but also publicly funded healthcare. All of that money that is going to an unnecessary third party, the insurance companies, the government could be collecting that and being put towards universal healthcare. I don't understand why the US is so allergic to this concept, and I don't think that I ever will understand. If somebody feels like from the United States cares to explain it to me in the comments why you're against it, I would love to hear why you're against publicly funded healthcare. Thank you.
he received an immediate response within an hour, and that is how he learned where Brian Thompson
Oh, in an hour?
would be
I thought it was
on
2
the morning
days. It was an
he would
hour.
execute him.
Within an
So
hour.
this
never
really
heard
even
that,
highlights more. I have not heard
Jesus.
that either, Pam. This is new information, and obviously this all came up during the NYPD and the FBI's investigation when they were probably going through his computer and his phone and his email. But this is just so striking that he emailed, this is how long he had been planning this. And this tells you his frame of mind, that he emailed United Healthcare leadership saying, posing as a $15 billion manager of an investment fund to learn where
Right
he
overhead.
was.
I just want to go to Ariva on some
Very
of this
unusual for my
information
area.
coming out of the courtroom today from Luigi Mangioni. For the first time, I'm learning, and Shimon said he hadn't heard it as well, that Luigi Mangioni posed as an investor with a firm and just reached out via email to the insurance company and then received a response within an hour. And that is what helped lead him to Brian Thompson, where he said, I shot him and he died. I knew what I did was illegal. Wow, Ariva.
Yeah, that's a shocking detail, Pam. I remember early on when this case came to light, when all of the publicity, we had all the reports, and I just remember the people who were supporting Mangioni, who were glorifying what he did, who were making him out to be some kind of martyr. And it was really sickening at that time. And now to hear the deception involved, how he found out about that meeting which was otherwise not a public meeting, that individuals who had not been invited wouldn't have even had access to that CEO. And he used, he posed as this manager of this large fund to get that information and then to stalk Brian Thompson, to show up at that meeting, to shoot him in broad daylight on a street in Manhattan, just makes the nature of this crime even more heinous. And I just hope all those people who somehow thought that this was an act of courage now understand what a heinous act of cowardness this was. Again, my heart goes out to the family that had to hear this, but
No, CNN. Shame on you. Are you kidding me? People weren't excited that somebody got murdered. They just understood the position that Luigi Mangioni was in, because they too have suffered so much. Like, they've experienced so much suffering that collectively your entire nation and was essentially like, yeah, we get this guy. We understand where this guy is coming from. We may not agree with his actions, but we understand the pain and suffering that he's gone through, because collectively, by comparison to Brian Thompson's death, imagine how, you can even calculate it, how many people were kicked off their insurance or denied insurance and life-saving insurance and died just so that these assholes could literally profit to the tune of billions of dollars. Billions. Who on this planet needs billions of dollars in their bank account? What individual person needs billions of dollars in order to survive on this planet? Like, legitimately. If somebody can genuinely answer that question for me in a way that actually makes sense, I would be impressed. But I have yet to hear anybody make any level of argument that actually supports the need for insurance companies that need to make a profit to the tune of literally billions of dollars. Like, I am sorry, CNN, but you were so off base with this. Obviously, it's CNN, so they're going to have, like, a spin and a bias, like, against this. But it's just a little bit ridiculous to me, and quite frankly, it's insulting to the intelligence of, like, the American people.
Hopefully this begins some kind of closure for them. That sentencing hearing that will take place in December will give them an opportunity to present impact statements and to talk about how horrific the loss of Mr. Thompson has been for this family. Again, we talk about the state court. At this point, Pamela, you can only imagine that this is about where he's going to serve time, because it is clear that he is going to get a life sentence, whether it's from this federal court or if he is convicted in state court.
It's not clear.
The lawyers are jockeying now to determine, does that life sentence happen in a federal prison or in a state prison? But certain that he is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, as he should, for the admission that he just made in that courtroom today.
All right, Michael Smerconish is actually standing by and wants to get in this conversation. Michael, what are your thoughts?
I want to follow up something Ariva said about the perverse nature, the way in which some have received this horrific murder. On 54th Street, where this transpired, the hotel where Brian Thompson spent his last night is a hotel where I would often stay when working for SiriusXM and CNN. And I remember being on that block in the immediate aftermath, 2 or 3 days later. What was surreal is the fact that there were no candles. There were no flowers. There was no memorial for Brian Thompson. And
Who would drop flowers? He wasn't Alex Preddy or Renee Good protecting vulnerable people. No, he was an exploiter. He profited off of other people's suffering, and from like their most vulnerable state, to the tune of billions of dollars. Maybe not him as an individual, he might have just profited millions, but he still made himself excessively wealthy at the expense of other people. This is such a ridiculous comment to make. Does this guy genuinely think that there should have been like a vigil held for Brian Thompson? Because like, obviously, the rest of society disagrees.
what I remember is that on a telephone pole that was adjacent to the murder scene, I saw something that depicted Luigi Mangioni as a saint. You might remember that there were wanted posters that were then put up in that neighborhood for other corporate leaders. And all of the glamour and panache that has surrounded this man, I just find twisted and tragic, and I can only hope that the way in which now he has just articulated exactly what he did is going to change minds. Maybe not, but of those people that have glamorized this killer. I can say killer now without any fear of contradiction because of what he has said. And one other observation I'd make is what a sin that we all couldn't watch. There ought to be cameras in courtrooms all across the United States, including federal courtrooms and including the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah, I am with you on that, Michael Smerconish. Our Kara Scannell just came outside of that courtroom. Kara, you were there for every second of what went down. Tell us about it.
Well, Pamela, Luigi Mangioni was led into the courtroom. He's wearing a beige prison outfit, escorted by 2 U.S. Marshals, where he sat down between his attorneys. The judge went through the process asking him if he understood his rights, if he had taken any medication, if he was under any medical care. All of his answers were crisp and clear, someone who was definitely in control and aware of what was going on today. And then when she started to ask him the specifics of his guilty plea to explain what he had done that was wrong. Mangioni chose to stay seated, and he started to read from a piece of paper. The judge actually stopped him and asked him to slow down because he was going too quickly through it. But a few things that stood out to me from what he said is he started it by saying, after years of enduring severe pain for a broken back, navigating obstacles in the healthcare system. So underscoring again what his motive here in this case is. And he walked through it saying another thing, he's underscoring what he had previously written about in those writings, the greed of the healthcare industry. He said he had emailed United Healthcare's leadership trying to find out about the specific location of the investor conference where he was targeting Brian Thompson. He said he claimed to have $50 billion in assets. And he said, like, unlike his other previous interactions with the healthcare industry, he got a response immediately within an hour. Then he went on to explain that he had made a gun using a 3D printer, that he had obtained a silencer, and then he said he traveled to New York with the intent to shoot Brian Thompson. He said, I knew what I was doing was illegal. He did not say it was wrong.
Defense attorneys are now at the microphones. Let's listen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Friedman Agnapolo, and I represent Luigi Mangioni. Today is a solemn and significant day. With today's guilty plea, Mr. Mangioni has accepted full responsibility for the death of Brian Thompson, arising from the events of December 4th, 2024, outside of the United Healthcare Investor Conference here in Midtown Manhattan. It was a single tragic event, yet he's being prosecuted twice for the same conduct. As Luigi explained in court today, he endured years of severe, debilitating pain following a broken back while struggling to navigate our healthcare and health insurance systems. Like the thousands of people who have reached out since this tragedy to share their own experiences, he believed that the system had failed him and destroyed his life. Despite this being a single isolated event, Mr. Mangioni has been unfairly treated since the outset in every way and has successfully fought off terrorism charges and the death penalty, while also fighting at the same time two simultaneous prosecutions in two jurisdictions who are trying to punish him twice for the exact conduct. He's been treated differently from every other defendant charged with this offense in New York. However, thankfully, New York law does not allow this. New York law does not permit a person to be prosecuted and punished twice for the exact same crime under a statute that governs successive prosecutions. It's also known as the double jeopardy law. Today's guilty plea triggers this statute, and we just filed our motion in state court explaining why the state charges must be dismissed under New York's double jeopardy protections. We will not be taking any other questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, let me go back to Kara and Shimon. I do want to talk about some of the details of what Luigi Mangioni admitted in court, but just to explain what we just heard from his attorneys, Kara, and you have been talking about this.
Welcome
One of the reasons why they decided to go ahead and
161
have this plea deal is so that
I'm good.
charges in New York State could be dropped because of what's known as the double jeopardy law in New York State.
Now confirmed murderer.
That's right, Dana. That was one of the objectives today by
guilty.
Luigi Mangioni's team.
I am
He was
okay.
being
Thank
charged
you.
both federally and in state
I
court, and the state trial
am
was set to begin on September 8th. But under New York's double jeopardy law, someone can't be prosecuted for the same crime twice. So that is why we saw this quick, fast-moving plea deal being reached just a few days after the final pretrial conference earlier this week, leading to Mangioni pleading guilty. Now, as you heard his lawyer say, they filed a motion to get the state charges dismissed. The state prosecution has not responded to that yet, although throughout this entire case, they have been saying that they think they did the legwork on this, they did the investigation, they caught Mangioni, and they wanted to bring this case to justice. So we will wait and see what their reaction is going to be in court. We can expect them to probably try to fight this. It will be up to the judge overseeing the state case to make that decision, and then sides could appeal. But it does look like the state trial set for September 8th will likely be delayed as this is all figured out. But these are still a lot of moving targets, Dana.
Okay.
All right. So that was the update on
Caroline Leavitt is gone from the White House.
No,
This
we're
is
not
such
doing
great
this today.
news.
No. Oh, there we go. Is for training. The OPP's got RPGs and rifles. See? Training for what? Survivalism? The ops got RPGs and rifles. Who are the ops? Okay, so we did our update on Luigi Mangioni case. So now we're going to be looking in, is the U.S. conducting mass spying campaigns against left-wing groups and anti-ICE protesters? This article is by The Guardian, and I saw it. I haven't read it yet, so I was interested. If you want to know, search up Atomwaffen Division Northern Order. That's the term. That's them. Okay, I will look them up after stream. That it sounds interesting. Here, let me copy and paste and Google it right now so I don't lose it. No rush. Okay. Northern Order. Okay, just a second. Copy. Piece to go. The Northern Order of the Canadian branch of the affiliate of the Atomwaffen Division, AWD. They sex traffic and shoot the synagogues, mosques, and the homes of non-whites. You want to be a part of this, or these are these are your oppositions? They're the enemy? So they're, are they like, what is the fucking name of those fucking losers? Odin, something, Sons of Odin, or some bullshit, some white supremacist group? The Northern Order is the Canadian branch of an affiliate of the Atomwaffen Division, AWD, a violent international neo-Nazi and accelerationist terrorist organization. Operating with decentralized cells, the group promotes white supremacy and the creation of white ethno-state. Yeah, what a shocker. Worse, they're terrorist cells rather than a militia. Okay, that's not good. There are so many that have popped up in Canada recently. Like one of the good things is that they don't seem to be united yet, but it is like a growing trend that I've noticed. Yens, so many. Yeah, it's not good. Oh, you're ALS. Canadian? Yes, I'm also Canadian. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on and I don't know how to increase the font in my chat. I should just bring it closer. There we go. Okay. Overview and goals. Formed as a Canadian offshoot of the US-based Atomwaffen Division. Advocates for societal collapse and a white ethno-state with specific focus on activity noted in British Columbia. Follows extreme accelerationist ideologies that encourage lone wolf actions and terror cells. I'm guessing the reason why they encourage lone wolf actions is because that means it would be much harder to take down the organization as a whole. Starbard says, they'll never be united. The non-sex trafficking fascists fight with the sex trafficking ones. I mean, I guess that's good. Like, so long as there's infighting, there's no chance of them having an uprising together. Follows extreme acceleration of lone wolf and terrorist cells. Yep, yeah. Legal status and crackdown. Canada officially listed the Atomwaffen Division as a designated terrorist entity under the criminal code. The key members of the Northern Order have faced police investigation and terrorism-related charges, criminal charges. Authorities report that members of outlawed networks have attempted to mask ongoing organization by utilizing alternative forms of like local active clubs. Uh-oh, that's not good. I am from Toronto, by the way. Nice. I'm from the opposite side of you. Scarborough. Nice. Specifically Malvern. I have never been to Malvern. I've been to Toronto. I lived in Toronto for a little while. I personally really like it. I remember when I told people that I was going to move there, and like everyone's like, "You're going to hate it. You're going to hate it." And the only thing that I found really detrimental about it, aside from the cost of living there, was that occasionally there would just be like this wafting smell of like putrid farts that would like descend on the city so bad. I remember this one time I was on I was on public transit, and there was this woman fighting with her boyfriend, and she mentioned it as a reason why she hated it there. Toronto's lovely, to be honest. Even the criminals are really nice. Yeah, okay. LOL, Toronto does not smell like farts. What do you mean? It totally does. It totally can. Like, sometimes it's just like it lets off like a relief fart, and it's just like the entire city just kind of stinks for a little while. I always thought that was really funny. Okay, good to know. I mean, I hope that you never have to use your Kevlar helmet or shotgun, but I also don't think there's anything wrong with preparing yourself. But we're going to focus on U.S. conducted mass spying campaign against left-wing groups and anti-ICE protesters, record reveals. DHS sent undercover agents to meetings and infiltrated chats of groups opposing Trump's immigration crackdown. And the only reason why they would need to do this is because they're fascists, because they want to hurt people and they think that's good. Oh, what's happening? No, I don't want to do that. There we go. Okay. Newly discovered records reveal the U.S. government extensively spied on prominent left-wing organizations and on protesters as part of a vast operation into groups opposing the immigration crackdown in Minnesota earlier this year. Internal investigative reports show the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, sent undercover agents into community meetings in the Twin Cities and New York City, infiltrated signal chats, and obtained financial records of mainstream unions and left-leaning nonprofit groups. I probably will. We don't shoot first, but won't be the last to. Yeah. I think that that's a good approach about it. Don't be the first, but don't also provoke. Like, that's my stance, is like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with being prepared or having the same kind of arsenal as your quote unquote enemy, or just like having it at all. But like, don't aggravate, don't promote, like, don't aggravate, don't like, hit first. You gotta wait, unfortunately, which, puts you at risk, but at the same time, it's just like, that's the only real method to do it. Nearly 30 international law enforcement reports were released on Thursday as part of a criminal case the Department of Justice has filed against 15 Minneapolis protesters. The defendants are accused of a conspiracy to impede U.S. immigration officers during the Trump administration surge in the region. The DHS investigative reports were disclosed by the government and submitted to the court by an attorney for one of the defendants. Just a second. Oh, going too fast. Far from SME arsenal, I am limited to antique weapons. They have AR-15s and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. Who needs this? And training to boot. And they train MMA daily and exercise together every day. They train to kill. Jesus Christ, they're psychopaths. Their highest passion is death. Sorry for word walls. It's okay. I just have like this much space to read messages. It's not your fault at all. I have to get a better setup. Eventually, I hope to get like a proper second screen so that I can just read chat, but this is what I got for now. Thank you, of course. My pleasure. I'm not surprised. It's basically, small man syndrome. I don't like using the term small man because just because you're like small, maybe I'm conflating it with short. Weak man syndrome. They've got weak man syndrome, and so this is like their weak man boy club to make them feel all big and strong because they haven't managed to figure out how to integrate into society like a normal person. In total, Hammett and Gunn was listed, will set me back $650 Doritos. That was not too bad. Yeah, they feel so weak. Yeah, they're like, literally, they just have, like, what's it called? Inferiority complexes that rule their life to the point where they're like, we have to hate a singular group of people because we're too powerless to actually face who's actually in charge. The ruling class, which is the rich majority, ruling over our lives and making our lives worse. So we hate the minority because they're weaker and easier to target, and they're, we view them as smaller than us, and yada yada yada. Same old bullshit every single time. The records show that in January, DHS launched an inquiry, called Operation Puppet Master to identify a network of conspirators organizing against U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The operation came as community organizing against ICE was swelling in the region in response to the killing of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Borgor? What do you mean, like a burger? A DHS report from February said the agency was looking into people who were providing material support to violent opportunists and agitators. The record suggests agents launched elaborate spying efforts targeting activists, protesters, and mainstream progressive organizations opposing the Trump administration's immigration policies. I was shocked at the scope and the apparent lack of investigative discipline involved, but not totally surprised, said Kevin Ryarch, an attorney for one of the indicted protesters who filed the trencher of records in federal court. Jens, what kind of burger, what kind of burger are you after? I was shocked, blah, 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 I already read that part. A DHS spokesperson said that Homeland Security Investigations, its branch that carried out the investigations, does not comment on the existence or status of specific ongoing investigations, nor on investigative methods. The agency referred questions to the Justice Department in Minnesota, which declined to comment. Cheeseburger? Nice. That sounds good. Sorry, I read that wrong. Beeschurger. Beeschurger sounds good. I am personally vegetarian right now, so I would have to have a vegetarian Beeschurger, but that sounds really good. That's one thing that I really miss, but the thought of eating cow just kind of grosses me out right now, so. The record indicated that the investigation followed the directive of Trump's executive order last year, and that designated Antifa a domestic terrorist organization responsible for riots against ICE. The investigation led to the criminal case filed in June against 15 protesters, which focused on the Direct Action Minnesota, a loose coalition of organizers that the government saw was part of a conspiracy opposing ICE's surge in the region. I love veggies. Yes. Yum. Yes. 161, 1312. I don't know what those are. Can't kill an idea. True, you can't. We're going to be watching V for Vendetta sometime in the future for one of our movie nights. The documents show that the government alleged major groups were connected to the criminal conspiracy, including the National Labor Union's AFL-CIO and Service Employees International Union, the local unions Minneapolis Federal and Education, and the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees. 161 means anti-fascist action. 1312 means cops are bad. Okay, fair enough. ACAB is what I used to know it as, and Antifa is not fascist in nature, nor is it a terrorist organization, despite what Trump would like you to say, which is such amazing propaganda that it's caught on for Republicans, but I feel like that speaks to just how stupid Republicans are, that they're like, anti-fascist bad, fascism good? How is fascism good? When has fascism ever been good? and several large left-leaning groups, including the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, and Showing Up for Radical Justice, Surge. None of those organizations have been charged with any crimes, although I wouldn't be surprised in the future if Donald Trump doesn't try to do that. The records have added fuel to the concerns of civil rights groups who have argued that the federal government was criminalizing lawful protest activity under the guise of targeting left-wing quote-unquote terrorism. Is that a Pickle Rick? That's amazing. Pickle Rick! Pickle Rick! I love Pickle Rick. That's my favorite. Amazing! Our nation only stopped the genocide in the 90s. I mean, I think that some people still consider it ongoing because there hasn't been appropriate reparations. Are you talking about, like, for Indigenous people of Canada? The documents show that DHS investigators obtained financial records of the unions and nonprofits as part of the inquiry into domestic terrorist financing. One investigative record showed the DHS used administrative subpoenas to obtain wire transfers from various financial institutions to and from SEIU, one of the largest unions in the U.S. Investigators also requested that the Federal Reserve Bank of New York provide financial data from the Communications Workers of America, an international union, the record showed. Yeah, when they stopped throwing the kids into mass graves, I mean, I think that, like, I can understand why people feel like it's still ongoing because, like, you know, reparations haven't been made. Our school systems, as far as I'm aware, haven't been adjusted to teach the genocide. There's not been any real formal, as far as I'm aware, recognition by the Canadian government that it was a genocide, just that, you know, there were wrongdoings against the Indigenous people. And it's still, you know, there still has not been appropriate assistance from the Canadian government to right the wrongs of the past, kind of a thing. But you know, there was, like, what was it called? Oh God, why is my brain forgetting that? That's true, yeah. The DHS further obtained financial records related to the Sunrise Movement, a national nonprofit focused on the climate crisis, because Donald Trump is not just pro, deportation, he is also anti-healthy air and environment. The records also provided detailed documentation of spy operations conducted by undercover agents who posed as activists and surveilled community activities. The one DHS report documented uncovered agent activity on 31st of January at the Sunrise Movement resistance skills training at the Minneapolis Public Library. An agent described activists discussing recruitment and de-escalation at protests. Ooh, so terroristy, so scary, oh my goodness. At protests, with speakers suggesting having a police liaison and safety marshal at events. Oh my God, so terroristic in nature, wanting to ensure that they're working with the police for the safety of not only themselves, but also other community members and the police involved. May I tell you my first step towards war with fascism? It depends on if it includes violence or not. If it doesn't, then sure, by all means, let me know. Otherwise, I would caution you. Setting up spy networks? To spy on who? How? Would you need spy networks? Or would you just need investigators, like journalists and stuff? And safety marshals at events, the report said. It was clear that the Sunrise Movement organization focused on peaceful protest. The undercover agent actively engaged participants, according to the report. At one point, the agent told someone in attendance that he works in construction and could build items that might assist other groups with more direct action protests. Oh my God, what an agitator loser. The fascists infiltrating them using white dudes so we can find their training camps and weapons caches, find their slaves to free them, and probably work with the cops while we do it. I would say that including some level of law enforcement to ensure as much that it's legal, and although I improve your general the concept of what you're going for, doing it as legally as possible is the most effective method, although it may be the slowest and most frustrating path to go forward. Ensuring that you are doing things by the book is the most important way in which you can go forward. Safety first. There was a great movie, including Daniel Radcliffe, about an agent who went undercover. Yeah, do you remember what it's called? The cops don't actually do anything. They let it slide. Yeah, well, that's why you have to force them, right? You have to ensure that you put the pressure on the police, that they do take it seriously, knowing that if they want your support and if they want your tax dollars, then, they have to ensure that they're actually protecting the community like they're charged with doing. They're too focused on parking tickets and drugs. They ignore sex trafficking wholly. I mean, to some extent, yeah. There was recently, I forgot what it was, but it was in regards to the way that the police were going to handle looking into sex crimes in regards to, sex traffic victims and sex workers and stuff, and how they were going to cover it. So I believe that they don't, especially since we had Picton. I don't know if you know who Robert Picton is, the famous serial killer of sex workers from the downtown east side, Vancouver. Yeah, the cops by and large, they haven't cared very much for a very long time. I don't know if that's changing at all. Have you never heard of Picton? Robert Picton? Look him up. There might be a good documentary out there on him, but yeah, he's prolific. The pig farms of Pemberton? Not Pemberton. I can't remember what it was, but up in close to Whistler. One DHS report documented organized, focused on peaceful protest. The undercover agent actively engaged participants. According to the report, at one point, the agent told someone in attendance that he works in construction and could build items that might assist other groups with more direct action protests. The agent told the individuals that going to jail did not bother him and gave out his phone number, basically trying for some form of entrapment. The records documented the operations of another undercover agent who joined signal groups of activists involved in protests. The records also showed undercover agents surveilling a virtual meeting at Hunter College in New York focused on ICE brutality and responding to state violence, a meeting at a labor center in Minneapolis during which activists discussed a wide range of political issues, a meeting in a Minneapolis public park about protest tactics, and a direct action Minnesota meeting at a church. Just a second. What does Starvard says? If they won't do something, I will. My civic duty is as an anarchist is to do the politician's job: food, civil engineering, infrastructure, defense, medicine, psychology, and the like, instead of begging them by voting to do it for me. So are you going to say you're going to run for office and change the system? That would be fantastic. The documents indicate that agents made audio recordings of the events. One undercover agent attended the training event at the gymnasium in a church and participated in boxing sparring practice, according to a DHS report. The report noted that the agent was surreptitiously recording audio of the event, but that at one point the recording erroneously fell to the floor. A recorder erroneously fell to the floor, and the agent had to return to the gym to retrieve the device. Oh, good God. Now I will make a system counter to the government. The people can realize we do not need them. So a third party? I like third parties too. A system with no hierarchy, where life is voluntary voluntary living in every way instead of being slaves to money, the government, corporation. I don't know what third party is. That is the concept of a third party, because right now we have Republicans and we have Democrats, right? That's a two-party system. So what you're proposing is a third-party option, which sounds a little libertarian in nature, potentially. I'm not quite sure. I haven't quite pinned it down yet, but it's sounding a little libertarian in nature. I will eventually set up a party to gain legitimacy, though. Yeah, that would probably be the best course of action. Set up a third governmental party so that people have the opportunity to participate in one of the most important freedoms in the world, which is democracy. At one anti-ICE event at a church, agents documented a license plate information of attenders, the records show. When two agents were approached by a man who asked if they were ICE, the agent responded falsely that they were not. Ryach, the defense attorney, filed the records as part of a motion arguing the court to compel the government to release additional records. In his filing, Ryach accused the government of presenting wild conspiracy allegations born from the fantasies of political retribution that animate the Trump administration. Yeah. Just a second. I am anarchist, neo-libertarian. Libertarians want the continuation of hierarchy and the democracies they enjoy today, while I am its decay. Okay, that we definitely have different political leanings, but I can see, I can understand what you're saying. You do not want the continuance. You don't want the continuancy of the hierarchy. You want people to have genuine, equal political footing, no matter what kind of a thing. Or how would your political system work if you would have a political system at all? Jens, okay. Just a second. He also alleged that DHS investigations were part of a mass spying campaign, and said undercover agents participated in organizing and directing the groups they were surveilling, at times working to entice people into discussions or committing crimes. That's a no-no. Don't do that, people. The records related to activities that extend far beyond the allegations of the 15 defendants facing prosecution. That case alleges a vast conspiracy to organize against ICE, but across a 94-page indictment, there are no allegations of injuries to specific ICE officers caused by any defendant and no charges of serious violence. Like people in my ideal world would have government if they so choose to, but my people would be free to live as they please apart from society of the statuses. But would laws apply? Would you still have laws apply to the people who wanted to live outside of your political system? Amelia Gonzalez Avelos is the executive director of Undia Unidos, Minnesota, a Minneapolis social justice nonprofit group whose activists were mentioned in the files. I believe that this is a clear attempt to intimidate us, to punish, and to politically repress disagreement and difference, she said, and that is not the America that we have built through hundreds of years, and it's definitely not the America that we are organizing for. Yeah, 100%. During trainings, organizers asked people not to record the sessions, Gonzalez Avalos said, but organizers would also say that if there were any immigration agents or officers in a room, they were welcome to stay because the group had nothing to hide, because their work was entirely grounded in the United States Constitution. Mike German, a former FBI agent and civil liberties advocate, said it was striking that the DHS was leading the investigation when typically the FBI would spearhead operations targeting potential terrorist activity. He said it was also notable that the DHS was using administrative subpoenas, which don't require judicial authorization to obtain records. Just a second, let's see. What did you say? Just a second. No, we'd sell drugs and guns and shit. Okay, so much like there is now, except it would just be legal, like legal across the board. Completely free. We do whatever we want, sort of harming of harming each other. Fair enough. So that would be a law, in my opinion. It would be against the law under your rulings to harm each other, right? If we harm each other, that's where community-led cells come into play to investigate the situation and provide reprimand to the wrongdoer. But before that's even done, it would be encouraged they talked it out first. Okay, but what about in the situation of murder? Then if no work, then counsel of peers, like a jury, except willing, but even all that requires the work of these cells to locate and investigate. Okay. That's natural law. It sounds very, very familiar. It sounds much like the system we have right now, except maybe it's like handled a little bit differently, because it sounds like you're describing police and a jury, etc., etc. Because currently, like, guns and drugs and shit are already being sold. Murder, like, why'd they do it? Who knows? That's the thing. Like, who knows? What people murder for a vast variety of reasons, and unless it's self-defense, there's not really a justification behind murder. Murder, like, why'd they do it? Did they murder because the guy they murdered was an evil person? Hi, Easta. Welcome in. How are you? Just a second, let me give you a quick shout out. How are you? Sorry I haven't been in your stream. I am exhausted. Have you been streaming lately? Underscore. Whoopsies. Underscore. We'll be having movie night this Sunday. We'll be covering, and we'll be watching Enemy of the State featuring Will Smith during 7 p.m. if you want to stop by. Starbart says, no hierarchy is what makes it anarchism. We can still have systems, just no hierarchy. Okay, I see what you mean. Twerk, welcome in. How are you? I was just thinking about you earlier. Are you going to be playing Elden Ring with me and Ricky and Johnny tonight at 9 p.m., or is that going to be too late for you? Do you even play Elden Ring? Here, let me give you a shout out too. Just a second. Starbart says, like, I'm gonna be for real if I'm raiding a training camp or raiding a place where they hide their trafficked women and children and they try to stop me, I'm gonna defend myself. Fair enough, but you gotta do it legally. Like, I understand, like, what is it called? Predator chasers or something? Oops, shit. How are you, Twerk? What's new and exciting with you? Oh, so hot in here. I haven't been on, AS is acting up when I sit, and plus hip is still a damn issue. Oh, I'm so sorry. That sucks. Do you have, like, are you able to get at least some level of relaxation in between streams and stuff like that? Does it have flare-ups and stuff like that? Starbart says, the laws are predatory. I know obey predatory lawmakers, and as an anarchist, I know ask for permission as a principle. Well, I mean, that's dangerous territory, Starbart. I can't really get behind that. Yeah, it's shit. It sucks bad. I'm so sorry, dude. I hope that it starts to, quell itself sooner rather than later so you can get back on. Have you ever thought about streaming from like laying down position to take the relief off your body? Just have like a top down view from the camera on your face, being like, ew. And I guess you'd have to have like a screen on the ceiling too. That might be a little bit difficult. That's okay. My sort of society isn't for everyone. I don't wish to force my lifestyle, honey. That's fair. Thank you. I appreciate that, Starbard. Who knows? Yeah, that sounds like that's shitty. I had a brief stint with some chronic pain called trigeminal neuralgia. So whenever everybody's like, "Yeah, I got chronic pain," I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like, I don't know what your pain is like, but like, I get that it sucks bad. Oh well, that would be funny. I would have to get glasses to see. Yeah. Okay, let's get back to the article. We're just reading about spying that the U.S. is doing on leftist like protest groups, calling them terrorism and stuff like that. Didn't require judicial authorization to obtain records. The government, German said, also appeared to be relying on theories of guilt by association to justify surveillance instead of narrowing investigations focused on specific alleged criminal activity. German, who previously served as an undercover agent, further scoffed at the notion of undercover agents spying on what appeared to be accessible community events. Yeah, I mean, the current United States government is a little bit of a joke, in my personal opinion, the way that they're handling things. They're just so desperate for a boogeyman that they're literally sending, like, undercover agents to, community events. Thanks for the SO. My pleasure, Torque. I've been trying to catch your streams lately, but I've been sleeping in a little bit, so I've missed them. I tried to send one of my streamer friends your way. Shatter Miss Nothing. I hope she reaches out to you to like do an interview with you, because she also plays Call of Duty a lot. You're talking about meetings that are open to the public, where they are recruiting amongst the public, saying, "Please come to this protest," he said. "It's hardly a challenge to infiltrate this kind of meeting, and that should be a clue this isn't a criminal group. It's very rare for criminals to publicize discussions of their criminal activities. The investigations," he added, "fit patterns in U.S. history of the government targeting left-wing activists and labor organizations." After 9/11, he said, those powers to spy on communities were greatly expanded, and unfortunately, they are being expanded even more so, especially with flock cameras, because you don't need like a flock camera, a warrant to set up a flock camera that's pointing at like a location where there's going to be a protest meeting happen. Nobody should be surprised that the government would use these authorities to target political opposition rather than target criminals, particularly so under this administration, he said. Read more of the articles like this. Though I thought that was interesting. It was more interesting than I expected it to be. I think that unfortunately the spying by the the current U.S. government administration on left-wing organizations that they're trying to demonize to the such high degrees, that there was talk in this article about guilt by association, and they're looking into the finances of some of these organizations, and I have a feeling that if Trump were to get his way, he would use any sort of financial contribution, whether or not it was a donation or anything like that, to any sort of his political, opponents who were running for office, such as maybe, say, El-Sai got a donation from, DHS or something like that. They would have him be guilty by association and be able to prosecute them. I feel like that's Donald Trump's wet dream. All right. We will do the deportation. We'll do this one. We'll do HIP news with Caroline Leavitt abruptly quits White House, and the shocking reason gets exposed. This is by oh my god, I've had it. I can't remember I've had it podcast. I can't remember her name, but we'll see. With Jennifer Welch.
because I'm so tired of seeing her lie nonstop. She drives me bananas. And the Christian cross while she's lying. It's ridiculous. Trump announces this on Truth Social because he's so unserious. I'm going to spare
So
reading all
funny,
of
I
this to
live
you,
here
but
and
my
I
favorite
hate
part
it
is where he
in the
says,
United States. Come to Canada. Canada's wonderful. We've got poutine for you. And Nanaimo bars. Have you even heard of Nanaimo bars? Nanaimo bars are delicious.
she's leaving at the end of the month so she can spend more time with her beautiful.
I'll read this out quickly. Our wonderful White House press secretary and one of my most trusted aides, Caroline Levitt, will be departing her role at the end of the month so she can spend more time with their beautiful young children and family. A decision I totally understand and respect. Caroline will now be one of my top outside advisors and an influential voice within the Republican Party as we work to define history and conclusively win the midterm elections. Caroline has been a real leader in the White House and has done a phenomenal job fighting for justice, liberty, and freedom since 2018, including our historic re-election campaign of 2024. Caroline has been one of the best White House press secretaries in the history of the office. Thank you, Caroline, for a job well done, President Donald J. Trump. They wouldn't want me. I'm disabled. I'm disabled. We would take you. The way he always uses beautiful, you children, is just creepy. I know. Like, I saw, like, a video of him, like, at some, like, event with, like, him surrounded by kids. I'm like, I don't know what parent in their right mind would ever let, like, their kids around an alleged prolific at that, pedophile. Like, it blows my mind. I don't know how they permit that. But yeah, we don't want you here. It's okay. Come visit. Even if you just
Beautiful young children and family. A decision I totally understand and respect. Yeah, of course he totally understands that because when Melania was a young mother with a newborn, he was banging a porn star. So yeah, when I think of who are big advocates in America for young mothers at home nesting with their young, I think of Donald Trump, don't you? I mean, what a jet stream of bullshit. But here, why? Why is she leaving? Well, it comes right on the foothills of her boss crawling into a catering container, slinking out of Air Force One to fly home on a different plane while he leaves his cabinet, Caroline's coworkers, the American press, and military pilots to get shot down by an Iranian missile.
So if you're unaware of what she's talking about here, we covered this on Monday. Trump recently had, he was traveling to Turkey, I believe it was, and the way that he traveled there is there was allegedly a very credible threat to his life. So he presented like he was getting on Air Force One, I believe it was, or one of his Air Force planes. And he had, his usual people with him all the time, except then on the other side, he snuck off the plane and boarded a separate plane. So people, he essentially had no problem sending these people with this credible threat against his life, people believing that he was on this plane. He essentially sent them to their death alone, right? Like he was a captain abandoned ship, essentially. Crazy. I bet that is the reason why she left. I didn't even put two and two together until now. Yeah, I don't blame her, man. I said this the other day, I would be so pissed. I would be so pissed. Because you're telling me that there was a credible threat on your life and you were going to pretend to board a plane, and then abandon your crew to potentially be murdered in your place. You're flying free some other way. It's just, Donald Trump is such a freaking coward. He is such a coward. And the thing is was there no alternative method to have this meeting that could have kept everybody safe? Thankfully it didn't end in disaster, and honestly, if it did, I wouldn't cry too much, but at the same time, I understand, why she would be so freaking upset. I would not want to work for somebody who views
So the
me
Lincoln
so
Project suggests
That he bought that
Caroline
Natalie
Leavitt's
Hart
departure
bitch too.
comes
Yeah.
only days after finding out she'd been left on a decoy plane targeted by Iranian threats. Now, I don't know if she was on that plane or not, but whether she was or not, we all know he picked Natalie Harp because he says she loves him more than his own kids do, which that's a low bar.
Wasn't she called a
And
diaper
Caroline's
changer or
like, yeah,
something?
he would have probably sent
He's
me on the
probably a
decoy
spy.
plane. And she is a young
Maybe.
mother.
For who,
And
though?
Trump now is considering a few options. And this is where this is going to get kind of fun.
Or Israel?
This is just a clown car of incompetence. Pop this up. We've got Carrie Lake, Scott Jennings, and Spencer Pratt. MAGA's best foot forward right here, these loons. Jennings was asked last night on CNN if he would take the press secretary job.
Came
Play the
out
clip.
of nowhere,
Scott,
and everyone is very
who
curious
should replace
about it.
Caroline Leavitt? Obviously, she is stepping.
I don't know. I don't know if she's actually a spy. I wouldn't put it past her at all. But the way that she's logged on to Trump is quite a bit. It's pretty intense. There's a lot of terrible nicknames given to her because of her involvement.
Jennings. And
Are you throwing your hat in the ring?
Who do you? Yeah. Well, first of all, you're throwing your hat in the ring, and
Will you serve, Scott? Answer the question.
No, look,
Answer the question.
I don't know, but I'll tell you this: Caroline Leavitt has been maybe the greatest White House press secretary in the last 30 years, at least. She's been nothing short of brilliant. She's done it while raising a young family. I think it's great that she's going to go spend time with her family, but I don't know a single Republican in the country who isn't in awe of and in appreciation of Caroline tonight. So Godspeed on your journey back to your family. You've done great.
Do you want?
I mean, this is just why everybody hates cable news right there. Number one, the fact that he is a paid person on CNN to be smug and to be a bald-faced liar. That is just so disgusting. But you hear when he's like, I don't know if I'm going to put my hat in the ring. Of course he's going to put his hat in the ring. The only thing that Scott Jennings is good at
behind the scenes
is fluffing Donald Trump.
I don't know.
That's it. He doesn't believe in anything else beyond that. His best foot forward is standing up for a completely broken man-child baby president that has dementia, that's dumber than a box of hot rocks, that cannot pass a cognitive test, that's raging jealous of Barack Obama, who can't string together sentences, who just found out that the word dumb has a B in it, who just last year found out about the word groceries. All Scott Jennings is good at is lying for him. That's his only skill. He tried to be a good boy after January 6th and had this little tinge of a moment of clarity talking about how the insurrection by Trump, how wrong it was. He wrote an op-ed and all this stuff. He couldn't stay in that lane for too long because his only skill is kissing the ass of broken men. And of course, Stephen Miller.
I feel like that's the fastest entry ticket into getting onto Donald Trump's cabinet is basically just to gobslob his ego essentially. And praise him to high noon and be like, oh, you're so important. Anybody who praises Trump's ego is in the door, regardless of their qualifications or anything like that. I wonder if she's going to be the one to replace Caroline Leavitt. That would be interesting. I mean, it wouldn't be good, but it'd be interesting to see.
Just
if that's
we are
what
in
happens.
stage 5 hysteria
I don't know, I
meltdown
can't
with Stephen
imagine that
Miller
actually
yet again.
I wouldn't put it
I'm
past
so
them.
tired of Republicans saying women are just so emotional. MAGA men are the most emotional titty babies I've ever seen in my life. From Scott Jennings lying right there to Donald Trump's midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. benders, putting out banger after banger of delusional bullshit at night.
I don't think that I could either. I don't know. I have this physical limitation. I have a very hard time kissing people's ass when I think they're just terrible people, or just full of shit. I can't do it. I need to work on that, I guess.
And then Stephen Miller goes on Fox News. And I mean, he is just like PMS galore. Play the clip.
Nationally, her credentials, her accolades, her achievements are second to none. Her job that she has performed as White House press secretary, the word exemplary doesn't even begin to cover it. She has served this president so well, this administration so well, this country so well, and very importantly, she's been a role model to millions and millions of young women all across this country, a mother, a family woman, a press secretary, a patriot.
Patriot. I mean, these people are so full of shit. It's ridiculous. She has been an example for women all across the country, an example of how to be a pathological, corrupt liar as she sits there with her Christian cross on and lies and lies. She lies about victims of child rape. She says the Epstein files are a hoax.
Yeah, like
she
that
lies
alone,
for
I
an
don't know how you
incompetent
could work for
OB
Donald
senior
Trump.
citizen named Donald J. Trump that has cankles and can't even put on his makeup properly. And a couple days ago, donned a wig. These people are so ridiculous. And here's Stephen Miller continuing his stage 5 hysterical PMS meltdown. Play the clip.
The sexual abuse of our children, they're there defending the abusers. They're there defending what's putrid and hateful. On race discrimination, battling with every single university to say, just because you're a young white man in this country doesn't mean that you're not allowed to get the same treatment when you're applying for college. They're the ones that are in court every day fighting to say, no, that kind of discrimination is good. That's the kind of discrimination we want.
Okay.
He really
You're the
looks
one
like,
who is defending child rapists nonstop all day, every single day.
Yeah.
Everybody you work with is in
so
the
fucking
Epstein
slimy.
files, including.
I try not to get heated like too much anymore, but like he just always somehow manages to get under my skin. Pee Wee Herman, yeah, I got what you meant. I was like, Pew Pew Herman is a good euphemism for him, but like. He's like a bald Pee Wee Herman or Pew Pew Herman. I think that's gonna be his nickname from now on, Pew Pew Herman. But like he's just like he just lies like so prolifically. Like it makes me wonder, like, do they know he has to know. Like he has to know that he's full of shit. Yeah, because he's bald. Yeah, like he has to know that he's full of shit every single time that he lies. And he's just like so self-interested that he just does not care and just keeps on spouting this shit. He drives me crazy. I hate that guy so much.
Your boss.
Ugh.
This man
Slimy
is so
worm
ridiculous. But this, did you see how angry
I
he
am
is?
saying that too because
This is
like
a guy
insulting
who they
words.
call Mr. Prime Minister at the White House. And I want to remind you, viewer, they have the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the executive branch. It should be high times. It should be completely high times. They should be able to get every piece of dog shit legislation they want straight through. But let's look at the optics of this. Zoran Mamdani right now. 69% approval rating in New York. His approval rating keeps going up. Why? Because he's able to get onto the cameras because he's beholden to no one except for the citizens of New York. And he can say, here's what your government is doing for you. Here are the improvements we're making. But MAGA has no ethos. None. Stephen Miller's whole shtick is trying to own the libs because he was picked on his entire life for obvious reasons. I mean, clearly. I mean, I doubt his mother even likes him. But he continues. Here he is with more unraveling. I mean, this guy is the most hysterical human being on the globe. Play the clip.
That's their ideology. That's their philosophy. Because when you strip away all this woke labeling, it's hatred for America, and it's hatred for the people who have made America great. It's hatred for the people who build and sustain things. Look at all of these DSA candidates. Look at all of these radical left ideologues. Look at everyone who proposes all these different woke ideas. What do they have in common? It's a people and a movement who...
Technically, he literally just proposed DEI for white people, so who's woke, you fucking loser? Good gracious.
Can't build anything.
Okay. I mean, that is just so fucking laughable. I mean, that is just so unbelievable. All of these big blue cities full of all these crazy woke liberals and all of the architects that designed all of the shit, they built all that shit. Show me one big red city. Show me a red state that's a top 10 state, Stephen Miller. You can't do it because all you can do is try to feed this empty, gaping hole in yourself. There's really no reason for you to even be talking about the opposition. Because there is no opposition. Y'all are able to go do every single thing you want to do with the legislature, with the Supreme Court, because you own every lever of power. Each day you should be getting on the news, not hysterical as though you need to change your tampon, Stephen. You should be getting on the news talking about, here's what we're delivering for America, because we have a supermajority. And here are all the things that we're doing to make your life better. He can't do that because he's dicking over America. And all he can do to offer as a substitute to the rubes he lies to every day is say, you get to hate these liberals.
Just hoarding. It's another form of mental illness.
All right. I try to exercise every single day, but sometimes I just don't have the time. My workload and responsibilities outside of work are so much that sometimes I cannot squeeze an hour into the gym. And that's why I have started using the Life Pro waiver vibration plate. When you stand on the waiver, your muscles are constantly firing to stabilize your body. If you're feeling lazy, you can literally stand on it, sit on it, use it at your desk while you're working. And the Life Pro waiver actually feels stable, powerful, and premium. Life Pro is America's #1 vibration plate brand. Over 2.5 million people are already using it. And the best part, if you don't like it, risk-free purchase.
I think 60 to 40%, 60 to government and state, governing, sorry, just a second, read that E-Step. E-Step says, I think 60-40, 60 to gov, including state, and they keep 40%. Yeah, so do you think that, like, after, like, a certain, like after their first $1 billion, that it should go that, or after, like, a certain amount of millions of dollars, it should be split that way?
We have a 30-day return.
I think that that's pretty fair. Like, that's better than what I would do, because I think that we should tax them at 99%, where they get to keep 1% after their first billion, and 99% after, because we're not taxing, like, what their company needs in order to run. We're taxing their profits. And I think that a lot of people, when they're approached with this situation, they get confused with, like, oh, well, then how are they going to expand and all this stuff? It's like, well, they get endless amounts of subsidies from the government anyway. Like, you're funding this stuff anyway. Like, come on, like, at least pay attention to how this stuff works. But, like, yeah, after the first 500 million, I think that's fair. Up to the first billion for me. And then after that, they get taxed at 99%. 99% to the community, and then 1% for them. 500 million is a lot. 500 million is more than anybody would need in their entire lifetime, and like a couple of generations on. Like, nobody even needs $5 million. Like, I could be happy with $10 million for the rest of my life, and even then, that would be a luxurious life, and I would still probably not be able to run out of all that money. One of the only reasons why I want that much money is to be able to give it away. But ideally, we live in a system where, in a world where that's not even required. If you can't live off that, even with their lifestyle, yeah, you shouldn't have that money. Yeah, like, if you can't manage to survive off of $500 million, maybe you should be classified as fiscally disabled and too fiscally responsible to hold that much money, because you come off as a danger not only to yourself, but the rest of society. That's a fair argument. I like that E-Step
policy. So for a limited time, our listeners can get $20 off the waiver vibration plate plus free shipping with the code IHIP at lifeprofitness.com. That's lifeprofitness.com, and use the code IHIP for $20 off. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and let them know that we sent you. He's trying to get everybody to hate immigrants. He wants everybody to hate woke universities and all of this shit. But guess what? All of these conservatives, guess what happens when their kids graduate from high school? They send them to woke universities and brag about it in their circles. And then we have, of course, dipshit Pete Hegseth. Pop this up.
I do.
Pete Hegseth has led multiple GOP-only classified briefings in recent months in a break with longstanding president on the Hill. Republicans have urged him to reverse course, warning the approach could backfire. But Hegseth doesn't care about any of this. You know, Hegseth is an untreated alcoholic whose mother sent him a letter begging him to stop abusing women. But here's the best line of attack against Hegseth. I'll let Seth Moulton take it over from here. Play the clip.
I mean, we have a president, a commander-in-chief who's made fun of troops for mental health issues. We have a secretary of defense who's more focused on testosterone tests than actually keeping our troops alive.
And it's true. I mean, Pete Hegseth is more concerned about stamping out DEI. And imagine waking up in the morning and saying, and being an American and thinking, I oppose diversity.
We're
one of the most diverse.
Anti-drug and stuff like that. And when I was really young, like a teenager and early 20s, before I grew up and had a level of sense. Now it's just like, I don't care. I just care that you're safe, fed, have the housing that you need, and to take care of yourself. If you have kids, and that's something else, obviously you should be like trying to remain sober and healthy for very least them, if not yourself. But otherwise, like, treatment and options should be funded by the government drastically more than it is. And not just treatment, but also like facilitating like integration back into society, so that we can have, because it's also been proven to be like fiscally more responsible to take that step than any other
nations in the world. I oppose equity. I oppose inclusion. And that's what they do. Mind you, they have a super majority. These people should be complaining about nothing, but that is their political strategy. Whine, cry, titty baby on national TV.
There's always going to be exceptions. Like, there are going to be people who just can't integrate into society the way that we've developed society to be. And so they are more comfortable, or maybe they're so addicted that they can't get out of addiction, because sometimes that happens too. Like, addiction, whether or not you are using, is a lifelong affliction. It's something that you never really get away from. That's one of the reasons, like, knowing this information is one of the things that I think kept me from being an addict. Like, being exposed to other people who were addicts definitely helped me see like how awful it can be. But yeah, like, it's a horrible thing. But yeah, some people, like, they just can't. It's not within their capabilities. It's not something that they even want to do or think about doing, because they're more comfortable in that environment. But even still, I feel like there's a way to facilitate their existence that can add, like, that has a level of cohesion, where we're not just like criminalizing them all the time, or using the police to shuffle them around to different homeless encampments, which is what happens here quite frequently. It's pretty like abhorrent the way that the homeless population is treated here in my area anyway, and I can't imagine that it's much better, especially in the United States, where they're constantly inventing new laws to penalize homeless people in different ways. Like, I remember just recently, not that long ago, we covered a story about how they were starting to like fine people. Like, you can no longer sleep outside. You have to have like, if there's beds available in terms of like homeless shelters and stuff like that, you have to go into a homeless shelter. Otherwise, you'd be fined or sent to jail now in some areas of the United States. I don't remember specifically where it was, but that was recently implemented places. I was just like,
television, because they cannot deliver for you. All right, that's all we have. Pre-order my book. It's coming out soon. Pumps is on vacation. I'll be back later with more news.
All right, that was just a quick update there. Now we're going to move on to, we're going to do the deportation economy backfires on American workers. Top economics. Top economists. There we go. Warren. Los Angeles has 50K plus homeless. Holy crow. That's a lot of people. What's the population density of Los Angeles? Do you know, accidents? Okay, let's see. Whoopsies, a little bit too big. One smaller. There we go. Okay, so the deportation economy is backfiring on American workers, top economist warn. All right, let's see. As the Trump administration continues to purge hundreds of thousands of workers from the country, Americans aren't simply taking their place. Instead, their jobs appear to be disappearing with them. The economy lost 23,000 jobs last month, yet the unemployment rate went down as the workforce shrank. Americans' emerging deportation economy may account for the riddle. For example, healthcare has been the pillar holding up a weak labor market for the past 3 years. But in July, the sector added just 22,000 jobs, well below its 36,000 average monthly gain for the year prior. 3.9 million people in LA. Okay, 50,000 people is still a freaking lot of people to be homeless. That's a crazy amount of people. 50,000 people are homeless in LA? I can't even quantify that. Just a second, let me read it. I gotta get out of that habit. E-Step says, the war on drugs has been the costliest thing in U.S. history, and all it does is drown the American taxpayer. Unless they have a history of stealing or violence, then let them be. Some people use drugs fine and go to work easily. I have seen it. Unfort. Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I'm assuming you meant to say. Yeah, like they're functioning addicts, and even if you're not a functioning addict, the way that drug use is persecuted is antithetical to the claims of the goals of any administration that claims that they want to tackle drug use problem. Clearly, the war on drugs is not working, right? If it was, we would have some level of success. The best way to stop the war on drugs is to literally legalize drugs, to regulate them, to tax them, just like they did with weed. Look how well that's done for like the economy in states in the United States that have done this. It has had a massive impact on improving things for people. But I feel like the US, get like, so long as they have as many boogeymen to point at as possible, it's beneficial for them. Yeah, and Canada, yeah, 100%. I'm so glad that all of Canada has legalized pot. For the longest time, it wasn't. But yeah, it has a massive impact on the criminal capabilities of operating. After that, then it's just like, okay, well, how do you deal with other factions of criminality? Because now you have freed up so much time, attention, and space away from like trying to go after, drug importers and stuff like that. Because I have a feeling that would decrease, although it will never totally go away. Well, then you can allocate those resources to other types of criminal activities and making your community safer that way, if that's one of your goals. Okay. Average monthly gain, social assistance like daycare or services for the elderly and disabled also slowed. Those are the sectors dominated by immigrant labor. Diane Swonk, chief economist at KPMG, told Fortune. In 2020, excuse me, tongue tied. Just a second. Accident says the last 2 years there have been discrepancies popping up all over my area. What do you mean, E-Step, in the number of the homeless population or something else? E-Step says if you legalize it and monitor it, you completely take away the power from the cartel, etc. Yeah. I don't know how it would work, but it might. Yeah, I think that's the idea behind the legalization of it. And that doesn't mean that the cartels are going to go away. But I remember this story about there was some sort of like legalization that happened or something, and then they had to switch to like stealing like lemons or limes or something like that in order to like boost their income and stuff like that. Dispensaries, retail, and pot? Oh, sorry, I misread your comment, Accident. So Accident said, the last 2 years, there have been dispensaries popping up all over my area. Do you like that, Accidents, or are you like, not for it? What do you think about it? Are you pro it or anti it? E-Step says, I would rather be around someone who smokes weed than an alcoholic. Why is that? Do you feel like alcoholics are less fun, or like is weed just your personal preference? Hi, gamer. Welcome in. I don't know where to hold all the grief I feel watching these sociopaths in power destroy everything that is beautiful and good. You put that energy into campaigns and political efforts that help oust these types of people from positions of power. You find the best representatives that you currently can and help them with their efforts and endeavors, because that's like one of the, although lowest method, one of the best methods that we can. You take that energy, and you try to divert it into better causes and better places, because, you know, you don't have to necessarily be miserable as we work on our way to progress. Although I understand the sentiment, it's incredibly difficult not to get pessimistic about it. Even I do, like, on a regular basis. E-Step says, alcohol causes more problems. How many times have you gotten into a fight with someone high compared to someone drunk? Fair enough. Yeah, I don't really think that there's a lot of dispensary fights happening. Most people are pretty chill. That's a fairly accurate point, E-Step. Okay. In 2022, 28% of direct care workers in the U.S. were immigrants, up from 21% in 2011, according to PHI, a research organization that studies the direct care workforce. And as the aging population grows, the industry needs to fill nearly 1 million new positions over the next decade. Those are precisely the jobs held by many of the roughly 200,000 people whose temporary protected status, TPS, was terminated at the end of July. Stonk noted, adding that 400,000 more Venezuelan workers concentrated in nursing homes, hospitality, and construction are also set to lose their work authorization in October. Just a second. Accent says, it's better to have legalized dispensaries and decriminalize pot. Yeah, I agree. Do you think that it should be decriminalized or fully legalized? Because decriminalization is not the same as legalization. The timing could hardly be worse. The labor shock is colliding with the state-level cuts to Medicaid and the largest payer for long-term care. Even as some employers lose their workers, we're not going to be able to afford to replace them at the wages necessary, warned. That means rationing or more people doing unpaid care at home. That unpaid care is where the cost transfers into native-born workers. Transfers onto native-born workers. And what they mean by native-born workers is not First Nations people, but people who are like native to the United States, people who like that's where they were born, essentially. Family caregivers already provide an estimated $1 trillion worth of unpaid care annually, with 59 million Americans putting in an average of 27 hours a week, the labor equivalent of roughly 24 million full-time workers, according to the AARP's most recent valuing their invaluable report. Swank said that the burden is climbing fast and broadening. Noting unprepared elder care has gone up quite dramatically, and it's in every single profession. Fewer paid caregivers means more Americans stayed home to provide care themselves, shrinking the labor force further without ever registering as unemployed. If they're not participating, Swank explained, they won't be counted as unemployed either, hence the lower unemployment number. Bill Adams, chief U.S. economist at Fifth Third Bank, saw the same dynamic, an unemployment rate falling for the wrong reasons. Immigration compensated for that for the aging of the workforce in the first few years of the post-pandemic expansion. But that's not happening anymore, he wrote. Even outside of the care economy, the evidence is piling up that native-born workers aren't filling the jobs of immigrants. Immigrants make up 26.3% of U.S. construction workforce and roughly 1 in 3 tradespeople, according to an analysis of census data by the National Associations of Home Builders. If a contractor loses enough work to delay workers to delay a project, the demand for everyone else on that project can fall with them. There is evidence that this is already happening. New research by economists Chloe East and Elizabeth Cox examining the surge in immigration enforcement in Trump's second term found that areas experiencing larger increases in ICE arrests saw unemployment fall amongst likely undocumented immigrants. Accident says health and elderly care is an issue. A nursing home private pay is $20 to $30K a month. Isn't that crazy? Why does it cost so much? $25,000 to $30,000 a month for private care? Why? Like, where is this money going to? I feel like there's so many exploitative, so many exploitative corporations in the United States when it comes to healthcare and elderly care as a part of healthcare. I just don't understand how the United States manages to survive. Like, who can afford to pay $25,000 to $30,000 per month so that you can live a little bit longer as an elderly person in at least some reasonable level of care? Which those places are often and frequently understaffed also. They have to pay their fucking CEO who don't do a goddamn thing. Yeah, it's disgusting. We just covered earlier in the broadcast the Luigi Mangioni and Brian Thompson United Healthcare CEO murder case. Apparently, if you're unaware, Luigi Mangioni, he admitted his guilt in the case, and he said that he acknowledges that what he did was illegal. Understaffed and and the employees don't fucking care. Yeah, because they're probably overworked in addition to being understaffed on an individual basis, and they're just probably not getting paid what they deserve either, because it's not like that $25,000 to $30,000 is going into their pocket. Nursing home have become corporate chains. Yeah. What is this? There's this. Oh wait, it doesn't cover that, but there's this. There's this movie called I Care a Lot, if you've ever seen it, with Peter Dinklage, and I can't remember who else stars in it. It's really, really good. It's a pretty funny movie, but it covers nursing homes and stuff like that. If a contractor loses enough workers to delay a project, the demand for everyone else But US-born workers didn't fill the gap. Instead, they lost ground too. For every 6 male undocumented workers pushed out of the labor market, 1 U.S.-born male worker also lost employment, the researchers found. Estef says, I need to speak politics. I have a mouth that the left wouldn't like, and I'm left but independent? Why do you think that the left wouldn't like it? You definitely should talk politics. I encourage many people to talk politics. Even if I don't agree with your politics, that doesn't mean that I won't listen to you or support you. So I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. I've thought about doing a little bit of a mini podcast every so often, once a month, having somebody come on to talk about their politics. If you'd ever be interested, let me know. Pushed out of the labor market, 1 U.S.-born male worker also lost employment, the researchers found. The damage was worse in construction, where employment amongst U.S.-born men with a high school degree or less fell 3% after ICE surges. Foreign-born and native-born workers complement rather than purely substitute for each other, Wonk said. They affect the entire ecosystem of the regional economies. So that's interesting. It's interesting to find out that I wonder why, it doesn't explain in this article why it is that, that it's costing them jobs, but I guess it kind of does, when there's less demand for work because projects are delayed, then there's no need for workers. So therefore, it's not just going to be immigrants that lose work. It's going to be native-born Americans who also lose work. Did you not hear the lady from Minnesota or something that it's a senator or whatever, and she said, fuck, she got a giddy, a damn elementary kid saying the first cuss word? What are you talking about? You mean the Jennifer Welch from the I Had It podcast, the blonde woman that was covering that douchebag? What's his name? Frank Miller? Okay. we're going to move on from this, and we're going to get into prison abolition. We might watch this one after also. Okay. I am very unfamiliar with the concept. Like, I understand the concept of, I understand the words prison abolition, but I don't know what is behind the movement. And I'm concerned that my understanding of prison abolition is a lot of the way that people, when the first concept of police abolition became more widespread and more known, was like being conflated with like not what the movement was actually about. So we're going to learn about the philosophy of punishment and the prison abolition movement. This is by Crash Course. I don't know how good it is, but I figured we could hopefully learn some stuff from it and assess how accurate the information is and see if it's biased and stuff like that. So let's
abolish the police. Abolish prisons. You've probably encountered these phrases on social media over the past few years. Since the murder of George Floyd in 2020, these rallying cries have grown across the United States. Prison abolition, which was once seen as extreme and unrealistic, is now a full-blown social movement. But however you feel about this, you probably have some questions, and political theory can help us navigate them. I'm Ellie Anderson, and this is Crash Course Political Theory.
I did serious. No, not her. Woman in the Senate. She was next to Schumer, and she said, fuck. Oh, Caroline Levitt? Is that who you're talking? I don't know who you're talking about. I haven't heard of this. I was like, oh my God, you have never said a cuss word like that. Like with seriously, and she got giddy like that kid. Okay, that's funny. I guess because it's incredibly uncommon to hear them say that. She's a Democrat? Oh, I wonder who it was. She was next to Schumer, eh?
In her 2003 book, Are Prisons Obsolete?, Angela Davis wrote that the prison is considered so natural that it is extremely hard to imagine life without it. And when you consider that the US has one of the highest incarceration rates in the world, it's easy to see why that's the case. We tend to assume prisons have always existed, but they've only been around in the Western world since the late 1700s. Sure, there were jails before that for short-term confinement, but nothing like the long-term carceral system we have today. So I wanted to know,
like the for-profit prisons.
What's the rationale behind our current form of prison-based punishment? Before the late 1700s, in England and colonial America, almost everything was punishable by death, which, yikes! Calm down, ye old folks. In this context, the idea of prisons was seen by some as a humane alternative. Which brought me to the 19th century philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who argued that the point of punishing lawbreakers is to keep people from breaking the law, also known as deterrence, which you can do in two ways. You can deter would-be criminals by having a serious enough penalty, scaring them out of committing the crime in the first place. Or you can deter repeat offenders by physically stopping them from doing it again, like by locking them up. And or using a strategy Bentham thought was even more effective: surveillance. Bentham envisioned a prison where someone is always watching, or at least might be. Imagine a circular building with an open space in the middle.
I forgot what the theory is
The walls
called.
are lined with cells, with one prisoner in each cell. And in the middle, there's a watchtower. A guard in this watchtower can see into every single cell, but the prisoners can't see the guard. Of course, the guard can't actually be looking in every cell at every minute, but the prisoners always know the guard might be watching them. And so, Bentham thought, they would be deterred from stepping out of line. He called his creation the panopticon.
There we go.
If this sounds incredibly creepy to you, you're not alone. 150 years or so later, the philosopher Michel Foucault appropriated Bentham's idea and offered a new way of thinking about modern punishment and its impacts on European society. To Foucault, the panopticon was a metaphor for a power system that influenced all parts of society, from prisons to hospitals to factories. Wherever you go and whatever you do, Big Brother might be watching. Foucault argued that people who live under this system of control eventually
like with Flock, we'll be covering this on Sunday before movie night, 7 p.m. We'll be watching Enemy of the State featuring Will Smith. I wonder if the U.S. is trying to create like its own pseudo panopticon with all of like the Flock style cameras and surveillance that's been popping up lately in the United States.
Become their own wardens. They internalize the power structure and adjust their behavior accordingly. No prison necessary. Which on one level sounds like deterrence at work. But it also sounds more than a little dystopian. In Foucault's words, the panopticon presents a cruel, ingenious cage. Today, some argue we're all living in a panopticon, digitally speaking. People on both the left and the right point to the state's increased ability to surveil its citizens through technology. Whether that means watching security camera footage or reading my group chats about The Bachelor. But okay, even with that level of security, you can't deter everybody from committing crimes. So what happens when they do? And what do we hope to achieve by punishing them? I learned you can break down the intended purposes of criminal punishment into 3 overarching categories: retribution, reformation, and restoration.
If you find a link to it, I'll play it on screen.
I'm gonna need to level up my coffee game.
Exact mug. I have that exact mug. Holy shit. Or at least one that's really similar to it. That's so crazy.
Almost.
Mine has a bit of a lip though.
When the point of criminal justice is to avenge victims,
also full
it's
of
called
coffee.
Retributive justice. An eye for an eye. Today, very few political theorists, or even pro-prison advocates, would openly subscribe to this rationale, which can feel very outdated or Game of Thronesy. Instead, the modern Western world takes the reformative justice approach. This version doesn't set out only to penalize an offender. It theoretically aims to correct their behavior. You can hear it in the words we use.
Yeah, there's
correctional
not
facility.
There's
corrections
like no correction
officer.
in the correctional
Reformative
facility.
justice thinks of criminality as a condition that prison or other sentences can treat. At least in theory, an offender walks into prison a criminal and comes out a law-abiding citizen, ready to rejoin society. But here's the thing. If we fail to make good on efforts to reform people who've committed crimes, we sort of end up with a retributive justice system, whether we like it or not. That's why more...
Accident says, I got a $50 ticket for going 5 miles per hour over the limit. I received a ticket in the mail with a picture of my car and a license plate. Okay, so here we used to have red light cameras here in Canada, and they were, I don't know if this is still like the way that they were essentially outlawed. I don't know if they're still like they're not in use anymore. But one of the reasons why they were like dismissed from use is because like unless they have a photo of you and can prove that you were the one that was doing it, or that you were aware that you were doing it at the time, then how are you supposed to like prove that a crime committed, because culpability of a crime is important here in Canada? I wonder if you could argue it's just like, well, there's no proof that I was actually driving. Like if you want to contest it, like do they have a photo of you driving the car, or do they just have a photo of your car and your license plate? Right? Because if they don't have a photo of you driving the car, how are they supposed to prove that you were the one that committed the crime? All that they have is that your car was used in the infraction in which garnered the ticket. I don't know if that's a possibility or just something I think about, but I think that's absolutely ridiculous. For going 5 miles over, you got a $50 ticket. Absolutely ridiculous. Are you going to try and contest it and be like, yo, this is just 5 miles over, really? I feel like that's also another reason why they have like these cameras set up and stuff like that, is so that they can just like any sort of infraction. It becomes like a cash cow, right?
Recently, there's been a greater push for a
like
third
nickel
way,
and dime their citizens.
restorative justice. Proponents argue neither reformation nor retribution addresses the needs of everyone involved in a crime. In this view, crime isn't just a violation of the law. It's a violation of social relationships. And to hold offenders responsible for their actions would require them to repair the harm done. For example, The Victim Offender Education Group pairs an offender with a surrogate victim.
I would have to spend a day in court, not worth to contest it. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's also another reason why they set the prices that they do. For some people, they don't have a choice, right? But that's fair. I understand that.
Someone who's been affected by a similar
I'll be right back. I'm starving. I gotta grab a snack right quick.
The goal is to help both victim and offender find common ground and heal from the experience. In this case, justice becomes about more than just punishing one individual. It's about understanding the pain on both sides of the victim and offender relationship, what reformative justice advocates want to normalize. It's important to note that experiments in restorative justice have been on a relatively small scale. We don't have examples of it on a large-scale civic level, at least not yet. But whatever it might look like in practice, the prison abolition movement provokes us to think deeply about incarceration and ask if these rationales for punishment really hold up. Let's go back to Angela Davis, the prison abolitionist I mentioned at the beginning. She gave a name to the network of systems that uses surveillance, policing, and imprisonment to address economic, social, and political problems. She called it the prison industrial complex, which is a riff on the military industrial complex, a phrase you might have heard of before. Police forces, private prisons, companies that provide food to incarcerated people or use prison labor, they all benefit financially from incarceration. And this is all wrapped up with pervasive racial inequalities in our country. Kareem, can you throw that Black American History episode on screen? Thanks. But what about the people who should theoretically benefit from prisons? The people sent there to be reformed. Prison abolitionists make the case that prisons actually harm more than they help. Because of the growing number of incarcerated people, U.S. prisons are overcrowded, which can affect living conditions, safety, and access to meaningful programs and mental health services. Prisons isolate people, taking them away from family and friends.
I think that's what
and
happens
the
here
harm
for
can
certain
continue
infractions,
even after
at
a
least. I
person
don't know
is
if that happens in the
released.
States.
Having a record makes it hard to get a job or find a place to live.
Accident says it's nothing more than revenue
If prison
enforcement.
is meant to be reformative,
Not to my knowledge, at least.
but it ends up creating new harms, where does that leave us? Well, that's where the call to abolish prisons comes in. To do so would require reducing the number of incarcerated people. In other words, decarceration. But then what? There are people in prison who have committed seriously violent offenses. Do we just let them out? Turns out, most prison abolitionists have thought about this. They tend to suggest replacing prison with other strategies to rehabilitate offenders, like restorative justice approaches, and offering more robust services that prevent crime before it even happens, like broader mental health and substance abuse programs. And many people argue that there's still a place for prisons, just a radically
Didn't really answer that
reduced
question.
one. Tommy Shelby, an advocate for prison reform, agrees that most of the alternatives that Angela Davis suggests, like rehab,
watching him a
mental
little
health
bit later?
support, and restorative justice, are more effective crime deterrents than the ones we have now. But he argues that sometimes we'll need to incapacitate people who've committed
understand it won't
violent
affect my
crimes,
insurance rate. That's
and
good.
we can't reintroduce them to society. Still, the world he imagines is one with way fewer prisons. And that word, imagine, is essential. Political theory is about imagining a better world. And part of that exercise is to set aside the practical considerations for a moment and think about who we want
Just to
to
save
be.
your ass in case
Contending with
it
these
happens
ideas
again.
is good and healthy. Even if you
all
and
of a
me and
sudden
everyone else
have a
watching
suspended license.
reach
Yeah,
different
I think that's only
conclusions.
in more extreme cases.
When it comes to
like if you
prisons
decide
and
not
mass
to pay or anything
incarceration,
like that.
it can seem like the place we're in is inevitable. The prison abolition movement asks us to remember that it's not inevitable, and that we are active agents in deciding the kind of world we want to live in. Next time, we'll talk about utopia, and if it's really too good to be true. See you then.
Thanks for
So
watching
they didn't
this episode of Crash Course Political
answer-
Theory.
They didn't really answer the question fully about what happens for, like, let's say serial killers and what do we do with them? Do we just let them out and just like, yeah, it shouldn't affect it? That's good. They didn't really answer that, which I think is an important question to answer, but that was an interesting little intro to it. Okay, we're gonna listen to Tony Shelby. quickly. The idea of prison abolition. Let's see what he has to say. He was mentioned in the previous video, so this should be interesting. Harvard University, Cambridge, MA.
I'm Tommy Shelby. I'm a professor of African and African American Studies and a professor of philosophy at Harvard University. And I'm going to talk for a minute about the idea of prison abolition. When people hear the word prison abolition or are first introduced to the idea, they immediately react, that's a crazy idea. And in a sense in which it is a crazy idea, as a philosopher, I like crazy ideas and I'm interested in reflecting on the idea that seems unthinkable. Sometimes it turns out that the crazy idea has a lot of merit. And sometimes even when it doesn't have a lot of merit, it brings a certain understanding, just reflecting on the idea and asking yourself what there is to be said in favor of it or perhaps against it. So maybe I'd start by just talking about what prison abolition is. Prison abolition is a very old idea in a lot of ways. It's there were people in the 19th century who defended it in Europe, who were anarchists, some of them socialists. It extends into the contemporary world largely through movements that are focused on the problem of mass incarceration in the United States. So central figures will be someone like Angela Davis, who's probably the leading philosopher in the prison abolition movement. And when I think of the idea, I think of it as committed to maybe sort of two main thoughts. One thought is that prisons are an ineffective and an immoral way to try to prevent or control or respond to the problem of harmful wrongdoing. And the other thought is that when you think about the problem of mass incarceration or the problem of prisons in general, what you have to think about is the fact that there are background social conditions that we live in that make this practice seem natural and inevitable. And what that indicates is that what we need to turn our attention to is transforming those social conditions so that a practice like imprisonment isn't really necessary. Now you might ask, well, why reflect on such an idea? Why think that's worth doing? Well, part of it is for those people, and I include myself, who think of themselves as prison reformers, who think that we need a really radical change in the way in which we handle crime in our world, and that we overuse prisons to try to deal with the problem of crime. Yeah. And I think a challenge like prison abolition forces us to ask, whether this is really an adequate response to the problem. Perhaps something more radical is really called for. And I think it's worth sort of testing your commitments against a radical idea just to help you see whether those commitments are really worth your allegiance. But I guess another reason to reflect on whether prison abolition has merit is because it's very easy to take a practice like that for granted because it's existed so long and it's ubiquitous, and it's easy to think it's just natural.
Want to hear my thoughts on violent criminals?
But when you think about it, you realize prisons haven't always existed.
Murder them? You can type murder in chat. It's okay. You won't get censored or anything.
Have existed for a long time.
Yes, please share. So long as it's not going to get you arrested, by all means.
And we don't think that that's an adequate justification.
And also, if you can clarify, because for me, there is sometimes what I would emotionally like to do versus what I would actually like to do.
Harm and suffering, not only
is
to them
that where
prison,
you're
but often
coming
to their
from,
families
or is
and
it
their
like
communities.
one
This is the kind of practice that calls for, I think, a serious, thoughtful justification.
How they killed them is how they should die.
Spent a lot of time thinking about.
So what about the efficacy
and what it requires?
Okay, but would you feel that who would get to carry that out? Like, who is the person that we deem in society who would get to carry that out? That would stop a lot of violent crimes. Actually, that's been statistically proven not to be, like the death penalty has been shown not to actually be a deterrent to violent crimes. Because I think a lot of violent crimes are oftentimes like crimes of passion or mental health disorders, etc., right? Or like, gang violence and things of that nature. But it's been proven not to actually be a deterrent, weirdly enough. Like, when people are committing violent crimes, they're not often all that like forward thinking in regards to, oh, if I do this, I might be put to death, kind of a thing. So, while emotionally it might be satisfying to, have that like desire, statistically speaking, it's actually not effective.
It's the classic questions in philosophy, and philosophers have also spent a lot of time thinking about the justification of punishment. How could it be that you can, by imposing harm on someone, somehow produce something good from doing that? And philosophers reflect on that for a long time. And so I think in this case,
I would think twice
prison
if
abolition, I
someone
think, is
were
ripe
to rape
for
someone.
that
If
kind of
it
philosophical
knew,
reflection
if I
to ask
knew
ourselves,
it
is
would
this a
happen
practice we
to
really should
me.
endorse?
Yeah, but you're not going to rape anybody anyway. Like, I understand you're like, if you were a criminal, it would cause you to pause and think twice about it. Yeah, but criminals don't think that way, right? Like, criminals don't believe or adhere to those kinds of thought processes, because for them it's very much like, I don't know if they're like, I don't know statistically, like, hell no, I wouldn't. I'm not a fucking stupid. Well, and you're also not like that kind of person, I'm assuming. Like, it's not just about your intelligence level, it's about like who you are as a person, right? But for rape, by and large, it's like, it's about power. It's not necessarily like somebody who's like, oh, if I do, like, again, like, if I do this, then like, they're not that forward thinking.
We'll be trying to transcend it. What could possibly
I can actually
justify
use my brain
imposing
and
such severe
prefrontal
suffering
cortex.
and deprivation on people?
Like, they can
even when
too.
they've
They
done
just
something
don't have
seriously
any
wrong.
level of respect or
when you
thoughts of
compare it
dignity
to
towards
other
their victims.
philosophical questions, even political questions around
I understand what
punishment,
you're
you can kind of see
Dyslexia for
the
the
merit
win
of
when it comes
reflecting
to
on it. So
spelling.
take something like the death penalty. Many people think the death penalty is wrong, even if it were effective at preventing, say, violent crime or homicide. Some people still think it would be wrong. People think something similar about torture or maiming as punishments that at one
PC
time
fingers
were,
hate
again, widespread.
working at times. It's okay.
So I think you can take a question like this.
I don't know if it's a superpower or a disadvantage.
Ask,
Probably a little bit both, but like,
even if you think
read.
some kind of
I can read
punishment
it just
is
fine.
justified, is this particular form
I'm not
of penalizing others one
like
that we
I'm,
should
like, really
continue
not
to
understand what
embrace?
you're saying,
Or should we abandon it, as many people have abandoned torture or maiming, and in many places, the death penalty? Now, you might think, well, maybe it's worth thinking about, but it's just a utopian idea, and maybe it's really not worth the trouble because we know we have dangerous people we have to deal with, and this is the best we can do. And so you might wonder, well, what good is it to kind of think about this utopian idea? And I'd be first to admit that there are some aspects of utopian thinking that could be worrisome, like if
it's both
rooted in wishful thinking,
dyslexia,
if it's not rooted in a scientific understanding of human behavior and what's possible, that might give us a reason to be skeptical of that kind of utopian reflection. There are things about human nature we don't fully understand, and maybe there's a tendency to have a very rosy conception of human nature or how malleable our dispositions are. And of course, if we're not willing to consider the limits of human nature and how malleable our natures are, then that would call for a kind of wishful thinking. You would just be suspicious that it's a useful kind of exercise. But I think there are real pros to taking up a utopian outlook, to allowing our imagination to reflect on things that seem far-fetched, or at least something that we could really only achieve in the distant future. Part of that is...
I agree with that. That's how I tend to look at things. Like, I never expect when I'm imagining my own, like, what my utopia would look like, that there's any actual potential to reach that. But it doesn't mean that that's not a reasonable goal to strive towards, and can't give you ideas to develop and, assist society in its social and economic growth to have a more equitable environment which people can live, right? So even though, like, my utopia is everybody's fed, clothed, housed, and, all of their health care is taken care of, their education is taken care of, they don't have any financial burdens in the way of anything like that, by and large, everybody has what they need in the world without issue. I don't think that we're ever going to get to that place within my lifetime, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it as a guiding force to try to figure out, like, policies or, paths in which you can take to try to get to a little bit closer. Step by step, you get there every single day. It just takes time.
Is to give received ideas common sense, the kind of critical scrutiny that it requires. And I think this is an occasion where that kind of utopian reflection can help us to not just kind of go with whatever common sense happens to tell us is the right thing. I think it's also true that because it is a harmful practice and it will be better if we could do without it, it encourages us to experiment, to think about what are the other ways that we could respond to harmful wrongdoing that doesn't involve such severe deprivations of other people's freedom, and ways that kind of limit their life prospects and shape their lives until their end. So
I do believe that there is a place for levels of confinement for people, not necessarily as a punishment, but to protect the rest of society. I genuinely believe that there are just some people who will never be able to be safely integrated into society because they just pose too high of a risk. So that might be an area in which me and prison abolitionists disagree. Although I do support the concept of alternative methods of approaching certain crimes and certain situations, I think that our current system is strictly like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's strictly designed as a punishment rather than a restorative justice system that we call it, right? It is not actually a correctional facility. Like, they're not actually correctional facilities. They are just punishment systems and confinement systems. And I think that a lot of that can be, noted in the way that prisons are run, right? They're run very much skeleton, crude. Like if you work for the jail, you don't get paid. There's solitary confinement. There's lots of other avenues that prevent people from actually having any sort of, like, restoration to their behavior that would allow them to appropriately integrate. And then after you get out of prison, you have all the stigma of being associated with being a criminal, which prevents further reintegration into society. So it's not just the prison system that needs an overhaul, in my opinion. It's literally society as a whole, in the way that we view criminals and past criminals and their crimes and things that led them to these places, and etc. But I think that's where we diverge. I do believe that there is a place in the world for prisons, but that's just my opinion.
You think about the pros of utopian reflection. I think, one, it forces you to reflect on received ideas and common practices that really deserve our scrutiny. And in this case, we're talking about a clearly harmful practice. And that's the kind of thing that we should always be thinking about. How could we do better? Could we find a way to control harmful wrongdoing, to protect other people's rights without having to impose severe hardships on others? And that can encourage us to actually experiment with other ways, less harmful ways of responding to this very serious problem. And I think that kind of experimentation should even lead us to think about, well, are there things about the very social conditions that we live in, the form of society that we inhabit, whether it itself needs serious transformation so that we might be able to live in a world, if not free of the practice of imprisonment, at least one where it has a much, much smaller footprint than it currently does.
I can imagine there being a smaller footprint, but I don't imagine there ever being a totality elimination of prisons. Okay, I'm gonna link this video because I don't have time to watch the entire thing, but we're gonna watch this interview between Adam Conover and Tommy Shelby in regards to prison abolition, and then we will take it from there. All right, let's see what they have to say. Hopefully they go a little bit more in depth to the concepts.
Hello and welcome to Factually. I'm Adam Conover. Thank you so much for joining me on the show again. Mass incarceration is maybe the great moral and policy failure of our time. America has the largest prison population on the planet, and you can bet it's not filled with white corporate criminals. Although only 13% of Americans are black, 38% of prisoners are, which means that you end up in prison just as much because of who you are as what you do. And the results of mass incarceration are devastating for the long-term prospects of those imprisoned, for their families on the outside, and the communities they come from. And guess what? It's not even that great for anybody else in society. Because rehabilitation in our country is a joke, recidivism is incredibly high, and what we're left with is an insanely punitive system that doesn't even really make us safer according to the data. So, many people have asked, why do we have an incarceration system like this at all? Could we imagine a world without prisons? Now, to be sure, prison abolition is a radical idea because prisons are so woven into the fabric of our society and our systems of justice that it's hard to imagine America or really any other country.
Have to call it a night. Going to a pub tonight and listen to a band. Take care. Well, thank you for stopping by, Accidents. I hope you have a good time and that the band is rocking and stuff like that. You'll have to tell me how it goes, either in your stream or if you decide to pop in here again. Thank you so much for stopping by. I look forward to seeing you next time you stream. Have a good night. Bye.
Without them. But it is an idea that is worth taking seriously because if we do, it can point to what is truly unjust about our system and how we could imagine a better world, especially if we dissect it using the best tool set we have to understand ideas, philosophy. And this week on the show, we are going to do exactly that. But before we get into it, I just want to remind you that if you want to support this show and all the conversations we bring you every single week, you can do so on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. $5 a month gets you every episode of the show ad-free. We have a bunch of other great community features as well, and we'd love to have you. And if you want to come see me on the road doing stand-up comedy in a city near you, head to adamconover.net for tickets and tour dates. And now, let's get to today's guest. His name is Tommy Shelby, and he's a philosopher and a professor of African American studies at Harvard. And while he himself does not identify as an abolitionist, his book, The Idea of Prison Abolition, does an incredible job of taking the ideas of abolition seriously, steel-manning them, if you will, seeing what they have to offer and how they can point us towards a more just world and society. I know you are going to love this conversation, so please welcome Tommy Shelby. Tommy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Right, hopefully it goes a little bit more in depth.
Thanks for having me.
So the idea of prison abolition has been around for a while. It's really grown in the last few years in American discourse. Where does it come from and what has led to this resurgence in the idea in your view?
It is an old idea. You can find a lot of people in the 19th century defending it, various versions of it. Often many of these people are associated with the anarchist movement. But in more recent years, you can think of sort of the modern abolitionist movement. What you find is there's a movement in light of a range of prison riots and Black radical movement in the late 60s and early 70s. You see an emerging kind of anti-prison movement, often associated with Black Power. And some years later, you get a more theoretical, if you like, version of abolitionist ideas, largely in the work of Angela Davis as a kind of one of the sort of, I think, most articulate and influential abolitionists in the American abolitionist movement. So that's largely what it comes out of. It's largely a left-wing movement, though it comes in many different ideological varieties, some of them associated with Marxism but some of them associated with forms of Christian pacifism, and some of them associated with forms of of anarchism, as I mentioned. So there's a wide variety, but you see it now cracking into the mainstream in a way in which it hadn't in the past.
And you're a political philosopher. What was your interest in the idea, and how do you approach it in this book?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking about the justification of punishment for a long time. It's a classic question in political philosophy, even comes up in Plato, but it runs throughout the Western tradition of philosophy, thinking about, how can you justify this practice that imposes harm on other people? Even if it seems like it's doing it for good reasons, it clearly has a huge negative impact on the lives, not only of the people who are punished, but others as well. But that debate within philosophy is usually pretty abstract. I mean, it doesn't really talk that much about the form that the punishment might take. It's more the prison is kind of assumed in the background and not a kind of thing that kind of gets focused on as this particular form of punishment. And that does arise in the case of capital punishment, where people do talk about, executing people. But the prison itself gets a lot less scrutiny as a penalty. And I really think it was important to bring that kind of abstract discussion around punishment with this practice that we're familiar with, but doesn't really get the kind of critical reflection that I think that it really warrants.
I'm curious, do you
That's
think
true.
there is in our
Usually
current...
when we look at the most, we tend to lean to examining the most egregious aspects of situations in regards to how we first start approaching reform of situations, rather than looking at the situation as a whole and being able to tackle it as a whole. We kind of got to take smaller bites. So I understand where that's coming from, but it makes sense to me.
system of incarceration, is there a consistent philosophy behind it? Is there an idea in American life, in the judicial system, in the criminal justice system, that is coherent about why we punish or incarcerate people in the way that we do? Because sometimes I think about it and I go, why do we do this? It doesn't. Does it rehabilitate? Does it punish? None of these things, none of these explanations seem to add up to me.
I don't think there's anything like consensus on what the justification is in the United States. I mean, it's interesting. In the 80s, there was a big movement of victims of crime to, have truth in sentencing, because a lot of people weren't doing their full sentence, and they were upset about this. And so there was a whole movement around this, and there were, hearings, and then there was a sentencing commission in the Senate to rethink sentencing guidelines. And it's interesting. I've sort of read through a lot of that work, and they don't really take a position on the justification of punishment. What they say is that, there's deterrence, there's rehabilitation, and they call just deserts, which philosophers call retributivism or retribution. But they don't really take a position on what the point of it is. I mean, we've seen a movement away from rehabilitation as a kind of goal within the U.S. prison system.
Really?
Okay, I gotta be honest. I think that the concept of rehabilitation, in terms of the prison system, was one that was widely adopted in terms of a concept, but it wasn't ever really adopted in terms of a practice. I don't think that we've had a prison system that was genuinely ever geared towards true, rehabilitation, because if we had that, I feel like our prison systems would look completely different compared to what they are right now. There is very, very little space for facilitation in terms of rehabilitation. And I feel like it is very heavily relied on the punishment aspect and the, if you do it again, you're going to have to experience these negative consequences again, kind of a situation in terms of the quote unquote rehabilitation aspect of the prison system, which is not wholly effective when, you're thrust back into capitalism after you served your time and you're not able to reintegrate into the system because you're shunned by capitalism because you now have this criminal record. So I don't personally think that, despite the claim that, our judicial system is about, reform and rehabilitation that it has actually ever embodied that concept in a way that would genuinely be effective.
Yeah, just in terms of like the infrastructure and the amount of money you spend on in-prison services to try to prepare people to re-enter society is much less focused on
programs and things like that. Yeah,
exactly.
have been cut massively.
That's right. And so what you get mostly is, some combination of incapacitation, just holding people so they can't harm people, at least not people who are outside of prison, and maybe some sense of deterrence for the people, either for those people who've experienced it, maybe they won't repeat it, or for people who just on the outside who never experienced it, just the fear that they might experience it. That tends to be the rationale that's mostly invoked, though I think a lot of Americans, as a matter of fact, are mostly drawn to retribution. That is, they think people who do bad things deserve to suffer some deprivation,
very true.
Depending on how bad the thing it was that they did, and they should be punished in proportion to how bad the thing was that they did or how bad they are. I think that probably is the thing that's most compelling to a lot of ordinary people.
Yeah,
it's
I
very
felt
normal,
that
very common.
a lot myself recently because
Normal's not the
I
right
sort of
word,
grew up
but
thinking,
it's
well,
very
is
common.
it deterrence? Is it rehabilitation? Is it simply to sequester people away from us? And then when you're looking at those arguments, you start to go, well, it's so expensive to have the prison. There are better ways to do rehabilitation. There's better way, et cetera. They don't really hold up. And then I started to realize just over the last year, oh, wait, the real justification that no one says is that the public, to a certain degree, almost demands blood from people who they perceive to have done wrong. That it's almost
very true.
A way to forestall the mob, like taking someone and just, undergoing a violent mob justice. Well, if we give the public the impression that that someone is being punished, they will be happier. And I started to realize that when over the last couple of years, the sort of reporting and public response to the crime wave of narrative of the last couple of years, regardless of how much you want to say that crime wave was real or imagined by the media, there was a huge upsurge of people saying, we want punishment. We want to see the bad guys punished. And that seems to often not be acknowledged by, when we're having these conversations, that's a real reason. That's a real motivation for the system that we have is to hurt people because it feels good when we see people who we perceive as bad being hurt.
I think that's right. I mean, politicians definitely understand this.
Yeah.
Maybe academics and other intellectuals, liberal-minded people may not take it as seriously, but certainly politicians understand that this is a current in the public. And if you can, whether through propaganda or misinformation or whatnot, persuade people that they're just really horrible people and there's a crime wave and so on, then that allows people to ramp up the punishment. And there's not much of a political cost to politicians to being really draconian in that, because it does satisfy.
I think that there is this belief, and I think that this comes along, it pairs along nicely with the war complex, especially in the United States, the war industrial complex that I lost my train of thought, but that, wait, lost my train of thought. Damn it! It was a good one too.
As you say, a perceived need that people have. People think they need this to happen, and
in terms of how it affects politicians, there's a belief with politicians, as we've saw with Kamala Harris, that the whole war machine and the prison industrial complex, being in support of those things, being tough on crime, etc., is somehow going to be, not adversarial to their campaign, but all actually beneficial. I think that with the way that, although there's a lot of denial in the Harris campaign, the way that she handled her speech at the DNC talking about how we're going to have the biggest army and all this other stuff. It was a massive turnoff for people, and it feels like it's a continued miscalculation by politicians in regards to how they approach situations, including the criminal justice system, right? Like, people are not, I think people have become less blood hungry as society advances, although it is still a major aspect of who we are as people. We definitely seem to be diverting from that whole concept that bloodlust is good. We seem to be calming on that concept and idea.
Either for some combination of public safety, but probably more often a sense of vengeance and having that satisfied. And I think I think it's important for us to have open discussions about, revenge and retribution as motives. Because I think there's a lot to be said against that as a way to approach criminal justice in a democratic society.
Well, yeah. What argument would you make against that motive?
Well, I mean, there are many things to be said against. I mean, the principal idea is that people deserve to suffer because of things that they've done wrong, and that, I think, intuitively, it just kind of, I think it probably hits a kind of deep impulse to retaliate when you've been wrong. That's in us, but it's hard to explain why, morally speaking, it's good that people suffer, right? So you might think it's always bad, is what I think. It's always bad that people suffer. It's never good. It's not intrinsically good. And the only thing where you could justify,
I think it has to do with the concept of justice,
because you're
right?
trying to prevent a worse thing. It can't be that it's good in itself. I think it's hard to explain. But I'm also compelled by the thought that even if you could explain that, like maybe you have some justification for it, maybe it's rooted in theological beliefs that you have. I think for many people it is. A sense of their faith and what they read in whatever sacred text that they have allegiance to. That can't be the basis for criminal law in a democratic society. It's a sectarian reason for a practice that affects us all. And many of us, of course, do not subscribe to these religious views. And that's the legitimate justification to say that, well, my God punishes people out of a sense of vengeance.
I personally think that our sense of justice has been held long before religion even became a thing, right? Like, way back in the days of our first early development, before we had like the concept of society and a lot of like even prison itself, we probably had a sense of some type of like what we know now to be justice and moral injuries that we'd experience if somebody decided to do us wrong in some way. Let's say somebody decided to steal our food, or they didn't decide to share, our pack mentality would be like, okay, well, we have to, correct this person in some sort of way. So I don't think that it's strictly based on religion, but I do think that religion exasperated it.
I'm like, well, mine doesn't, or, if you're not a person of faith like that. So I think you need a public reason, a reason that your other citizens in a pluralistic society can accept and be compelled by. And I think it's hard to give justification for retribution that satisfies, I think, that democratic condition.
Yeah, well, that is such a clear explanation. I mean, I think off the top of my head, and look, as I often say on this show, I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy, so I'm not trying to tangle with you here, but I'll offer my own off the top of my head justification.
Okay, actually, before going any further, so that was interesting. Unfortunately, I don't have much time. I have to go run some errands before Elden Ring tonight. I don't know if I will be live again tonight, but I will be playing Elden Ring tonight with Ricky Fontaine over at Ricky Fontaine MF. So if you want to come check it out, then that would be wonderful. Otherwise, we are going to rate sweetness. Huh? Yay! Okay. We're going to rate Sweetness. She is a wonderful streamer. She's super fun. Even though she's not talking about politics, I'm sure you will have a awesome time. And thank you all so much for everybody who was here. Again, we have movie night this Sunday. We're going to start a little bit early, but the movie will start again at 7:30 p.m. We'll be watching Enemy of the State. But if you want to check in early for a discussion on a little bit more in depth about the surveillance state that's developing in the United States, feel free to do so. But I hope to see you then. Thank you all so much for the wonderful stream, and I hope to see you all later. Bye-bye, 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 bye. Oh, where's my outro screen? Bye-bye.